evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, as brought to you in collaboration with Apex Racing Academy. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight as we take part in round number 7, we'll be focusing on the Apex Racing Academy lobby number 1 once again. It is the return of the more populated lobby, is split across 3 classes on Wednesday nights. We have upgraded the broadcast, we have upgraded the equipment, and we have ironed out all of the issues which have plagued us time and time again. And today we will be looking at some fantastic racing ahead as our drivers make their way to and around the Red Bull Ring Grand Prix circuit as located in Austria. Tonight's schedule is as follows: times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or UTC. At 8 o'clock, so in approximately 14 minutes time, we'll begin underway with the qualifying session. 15 minutes to determine who will be on pole within the respective class, indeed our overall grid formation for the purposes of race number 1, which will follow immediately afterwards. Race number 1, of course, being a sprint race, a 15-minute race where it's start to finish, no pit stop, no overall race strategy other than get to the front and take the win as part of your class. And then after that, we'll be presenting you with some post-race interviews for our class winners before taking a brief break before returning for the all-important feature race, the second race of the night, worth the same amount of points as the sprint, and that race will be kicking off at approximately 9 o'clock this evening, the 60-minute race, which is just about pace as it is about strategy, and we'll be returning for that approximately 5 to 9 to give you the build-up. Now, who are we? Well, I'm your commentator. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of the racing action tonight, and indeed tomorrow night as well, when we take a look back on lobby number 2. That is the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby. But tonight our focus is on the Apex Racing Academy lobby, the premier lobby for this series, as all of our drivers are getting ready to go racing once again. And speaking of Apex Racing Academy, it's only fair that we introduce our primary sponsor for lobby 1, and here they are. So who are Apex Racing Academy, I hear you ask? Well, Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers and features not found in other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions. Moreover, in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synchronized directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Then why not sign up today at apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. Now, of course, we're very grateful to have Apex Racing Academy continuing their partnership with us into Season 2 from Season 1, and they're contributing to the sizable prize pool available to our Lobby 1 drivers come the end of this season. Remember, there are prizes up for grabs for our championship winners within each of the respective classes, but also for the best overtake of the season, the best livery, the most improved driver, and the most consistent driver over the course of the season. And all those will be determined come at the end of the season. Post-season, of course, as we'll need some time to analyse all of the racing action that's occurred over the course of the 12 rounds. But speaking of rounds, after the opening 6 rounds, as we come back from the Christmas break, last time out we went to Le Mans in France for what was the first of our two-hour super endurance races, where we saw our drivers take to the French circuit, the legendary endurance circuit. And looking at our pro class standings firstly, in the Drivers' Championship we can see that Matt Caruana, with his lead cut into at Le Mans with a difficult day at the French circuit, his lead now only what is 21 points over Billy Fletcher. However, the bigger question really is, who is going to be the main challenger to Matt Caruana? Because as you can see, Billy Fletcher, Håkon Grebstad and Tom Edmunds only separated by a margin of 9 points from P2 to P4. And then Luke McKeown there in P5, gaining ground rapidly with another blistering performance at Le Mans and really building up that momentum, and soon will be well within reach of the top 4. He's almost there. Could he potentially get himself into that battle for the top 4 come at the end of tonight? The biggest shout out, however, goes to the driver of the day in the pro class, Håkon Grebstad, who in P3 pulling off an absolutely brilliant two-stop at Le Mans to come home in P2 at Le Mans, and that's why he's jumped right up the standings, now only 2 points behind Billy Fletcher. Outside of our top 5, we can see Rees Carroll there putting in another middle-ish performance at Le Mans, but still keeping his championship hopes alive in P6 and looking to bounce back even more tonight. Elliot Harper unable to take part, and I believe we may not be seeing Elliot Harper in the near future unless I've been informed incorrectly due to a clash of circumstances, but we wish Elliot well. He's now down to P7 with Oystein Hereford, Jason Landry and Mark Fletcher all looking to make continuous gains. Outside of the top 10 in the Pro Class, meanwhile, we've got Tom Male there, who was unable to finish the race due to difficulties with the car, and as a result did not pick up any points, and is now languishing in P11, with Tom Dadswell only a point off him, and Dadswell having a phenomenal performance at Le Mans, and really building up some championship momentum. Robert De Sunic, Anders Vries Ankersen, and James Holman completing your top 15, with Kenny Heremans, Deegan Fairclough, Callum Brandt, Daniel Blomqvist, and Tony Verschaft completing your Pro Championship as it currently stands. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, it's a bit of a different story. Our championship leader, Callum Reid-Garton, now leading by almost 100 points. In fact, if you do the math there, it is the best part of 93 points, and absolutely on dominant form as it currently stands, and again another dominant performance from the championship leader at Le Mans, seeing him put that BMW M4 far clear of the rest of the Pro-Am field. So really the big question at this point has become who is the main competitor in P2, given the fact that we've got so many drivers battling for that second place position, with Jean-Louis Desschans being the leader at this point in time in that battle for P2 on 175 points, but as you can see, ranging from Jean-Louis Desschans all the way down to Jeremy Debova in P7, 6 drivers separated by a margin of 35 points, and any one of them could jump to the head of this pack if anything were to happen to Jean-Louis Desschans, for example, or Jaco Boshoff, or it's the case that just 1 or 2 drivers have an off night and the drivers further down have a great night. And those drivers include, but not limited to, Jaco Boshoff, Edward Lack, Matthew Hodges, Ben Hicks and Jeremy Debova. Dirt Bouts in P8, Lucas Romano P9 and Daniel Holmer P10 completing the top 10 there of the Pro-Am, but you can see how close it is even in the top 10, and really you could argue at this point we are looking at a colossal battle for P2, and if Callum Reid-Garton does have a couple of off nights, you never know what could happen towards the end of the championship season. Outside the top 10 in the Pro-Am class, Anthony Bett there on 112 points. Were non-finish at Le Mans. Very unfortunate for Anthony Bett, but he'll be looking to come back stronger tonight, with Paul King and Phil McDougall not able to take part at Le Mans, and as a result staying on their previous points tallies, with Didi Vlaming putting in a good performance to go up to 102 points, only P14 on countback versus Phil McDougall, and then Peter Lemkins competing your top 15. Hackenshot, James Slate, Stephen Norman, Andrew Lovesey and Colin Martin completing our 20 drivers in the Pro-Am Championship. Meanwhile, in the AM class, the story, a mixture of the two compared to the Pro and the Pro-Am, with the fact that we saw the colossal incident whereby Matt Emmons having a difficult day at the office at Le Mans has gifted the opportunity to Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, Stefan Tim Koopmans and Jochen Siegert to make it a 4-way fight for the championship lead in the AM class as we go into the second half of the season. You can see the top 4 there only separated by 15 points, with Gamborg Rasmussen really putting in a solid performance at Le Mans, but nothing compared to the performance of Stefan Tim Koopmans, with it would seem that Gamborg Rasmussen, who was on course for the potential win alongside Alexander Batak at one point in Le Mans, both drivers falling to the wayside to see Stefan Tim Koopmans put in the winning performance at the end of the day. That's not to take away, however, from what has been an incredibly competitive AM class. Matthew Addy there in P5 on 169 points, only 8 points clear of Alexander Batak, who with that good start at Le Mans was not able to convert it into an overall win in the end due to an incident midway through the race, which was very unfortunate, but still he'll come back stronger tonight, there's no doubt. Kurt Van Hoenacker, George Bland, Arjan Kregel and Morten Oosthus completing our top 10 in the AM class, and then outside of the top 10 we can see Navarro Debova not able to finish at Le Mans and not scoring any points, but looking for that breakthrough into the top 10 once again, with Gus Franken, Renaud Van Utrecht, Arjan Bakker, Peter Kupiers and Peter Dombrecht unable to take part at Le Mans and not gaining any more points. Meanwhile, in the team championship, we can see, and this team championship, just to remind you all, ladies and gentlemen, is split across the 2 lobbies. So as a result, there are team drivers in both lobbies, or just allocated to one lobby, and these are the team championships as they currently stand, or you could call it the Constructors' Championship, if you will. RTA, or Racing Team Astra, currently leading by a margin of 9 points over Luxim 24 with M&V Esports. It's still very close between these two teams as they go into the second half of the season. Where the difference has really started to emerge is that RD Simsport in P3 have not made the breakaway versus Switchback Motorsport, or SBMS, and as a result, the battle for P3 rages on and really being that number 1 contender to get into the fight for the top 2. But with Next Gen Blue, Altitude Esports there as well battling for P3, it is the case that right now the 4 teams from P3 to P6 all have valid opportunities to close the gap to the top 2 come the end of tonight. Apex with M&V Esports on 361 points, fending off by 16.6 are Project Black, who have seen an upturn in fortune in recent rounds and have continued to try and push that upturn forward, with Team Tetrarouge as well putting in another stellar performance at Le Mans, and Ignium Motorsport there still in P10 when it all comes to fruition. Outside the top 10, Ignium Spark there, closing down the top 10 very rapidly, the second of the Ignium Motorsport teams, with NXTGEN Orange and Delta Motorsport only separated by a point between the two of them in the battle for P12. TGC Racing and RD Simsport completing the top 15, before McChallenge B2 unable to score any points last time out at Le Mans, seeing themselves fall down the standings quite significantly, and Ignium Blaze, McChallenge B1, SVPMR and Bright Esports completing our top 20. Outside of the top 20, and the teams are looking to make a break into the top 20 tonight, Ignium Motorsport Phoenix, the third of the Ignium Motorsport teams, Team Racing Netherlands Blue, Team Racing Netherlands Red, DDR and TRN Orange, Team Racing Netherlands Orange, all looking to get some major points on the board and try to get themselves closer to that top 20. Now, as for the track tonight, we are here at the Red Bull Ring, the Grand Prix layout. We are at the Styrian circuit located in Spielberg in Austria. This circuit consisting of 9 corners, and it needs no introduction, for it is a circuit featured time and time again in multiple different series. Many of you, of course, will be aware of its feature and its prominence in Formula 1, particularly in the last couple of years, where it has been, I believe, 2 years ago, it was the season opener, and we did see 2 back-to-back races at the Red Bull Ring with the Austrian GP and then the Styrian GP as well. But it is the case that this circuit, a much-loved circuit by our drivers, because whilst it looks simple on paper, it is a case it's about fast straights and heavy braking zones that are both uphill and downhill, and it's a major change on the bravery of the brakes and seeing who can outbrake the other driver for overtaking. And as we can see from this reference lap brought to us by Håkon Grebstad, let's ride on board with the McLaren MP412C driver as he takes us for a lap. So coming out to the final corner and out to turn 9 and charging across the timeline to go on to a lap, making his way uphill into the braking zone for turn 1. Braking at the 100 metre board and coming down to second gear here and pushing it over the apex and stamping on the throttle as soon as he touches the apex curve to rotate the car through, because he's now got the long straight up towards turn number 2. Charging up the hill here, going through the left-hand kink that's coming up, which is sometimes classified as a corner, but we won't be calling it a corner here, and making his way into the uphill braking zone for turn 2, a hairpin right-hand corner, and braking all the way down the gearbox to first gear at the 100 metre board, and immediately getting on the throttle as soon as he taps the apex, then rotating the car, using the apex curve to push it through, and now charging down towards turn 3. Again, another long straight here, slightly shorter than the run from turn 1 to turn 2, but now into a downhill braking zone. A change on the brakes and braking at about 110 metres, coming down to second gear and rolling the car into the apex before getting on the throttle and using the full width of the corner in order to carry as much speed on exit as he now goes for the kink before and into turn number 5. A downhill braking zone here, technically trail braking into turn number 5 as he makes his way off camber and the car gets pushed out to the outside, and now coming into the braking zone for turn number 6 here, a much more tighter corner in terms of you want to get nice and tight to the apex. A little bit wide there, but he's kept it together on exit as he comes through 7. 2 more corners remain as he makes his way over the crest now and into the downhill braking zone at turn number 8, trail braking in from 5th gear to 4th gear here, just bringing the car very nicely onto apex before getting back on the throttle, and now the final braking zone for turn number 9 here, coming down to 3rd gear, a right-hand style corner, albeit with a very tricky apex curve to navigate, and he can complete that, a nice lap by Håkon Grebstad. Now, as for our rules tonight, we are using our standard rule setup as per the opening 5 rounds because we've gone back to the sprint and feature race format. Our drivers tonight shall be running the iRacing medium downforce fixed setup for both of the races. The sprint race will see each driver having 1 fast repair available, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. Meanwhile, in the feature race, the grid will be set by the reverse Drivers' Championship order based on the championship standings after the previous round. So the championship leader in each class will be at the back of their respective class on the grid going into the feature race based on the standings after round 6. So if they have a disastrous sprint race today, championship leader, they'll still be starting at the back. They will not be given grace for having a disastrous sprint race. Every point and every position matters. On top of that, as we pretty much indicated, our grid will be separated into driver classes, with the classes starting approximately 2 seconds apart, and that 2-second gap will be determined by the driver who starts at the front of each of the classes. So the pros will start ahead of the pro-ams, and the pro-ams will start ahead of the ams. Our driver's starting fuel load shall be restricted to 70% for the start of the race, because that will then lead to the mandatory pit stop, which will require our drivers to take on fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional. And each driver will have 1 fast repair available, and they shall be subject to a drive-through penalty should they accumulate 25 or more instant points. But enough about the rules and regulations. Let's head back to those live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, because we are only now moments away from going qualifying. And indeed, we are looking forward to what is expected to be a very, very difficult qualifying session. Why is it difficult, I hear you ask? Well, it's not because the circuit itself is difficult in terms of finding lap time or an absolute ballpark of lap time. It's more because of the fact that to get the best possible lap time here, you have to have that outright pace, but you also need to have that bravery on the brakes, and also a tertiary element, you need to have the ability to find some slipstream out on this circuit. Slipstream is so powerful around here, given the fact that we have got 3 extended straights, and we're looking at what is the second of the extended straights on a given lap right now, with Billy Fletcher there in the camera shot as he makes his way down. Of course, the number 1 driver here, because he was our winner in the Pro class in Season 1, so he has the right to take the number 1 car as he makes his way around through turn number 4 and 5, and as he heads now up into number 5, I should say, getting our numbering slightly wrong there. We do just briefly check in with you guys and girls in the chat here. And we can see Jaco Boshoff there in the YouTube chat from Ignium Motorsport saying good evening. It's a shame to miss tonight, but I'll be back for the rest of the season. We do look forward to seeing you join us again in round number 8, Jaco. But we do miss you dearly. You're one of the fan favourites, no doubt. Indeed, you're one of the drivers I love to see out on the circuit. And well, we do miss you, my friend. And indeed, well, it's been a case we've been missing all of the racing here. More the fact we've had the Christmas break, and a happy new year to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you've all had great Christmases and you're all excited for some fantastic racing. I definitely am, and we are only moments away with this final practice session. Right now, only 30 seconds of it left, and it looks as though Luke McKeown, the fastest man of everybody so far, with a 28.649 in the Pro class. And meanwhile, Callum Reid-Garton in the Pro-Am class, again setting the standard high with a 29.367 in the Pro-Ams. And of course, this is practice. It may be the case that there might be some sandbagging going on or race pace testing going on. We have to wait and see how it's all going to play out in the actual qualifying session itself. And last but not least, in the AM class right now, Matthew Addy, albeit you may not be able to see him too clearly, the SVPMR Ferrari sandwiched in between the 2 Ignium Motorsport machines there, the fastest AM drivers it currently stands. But indeed, we've still got plenty to go here. We're not yet in qualifying. Let's wait and see what happens in qualifying. That will determine what we are to potentially expect in the race. As we get the transition over now, we are getting ready to go qualifying. So at any moment, we will see our timing screens update. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the qualifying session, as all of our drivers will now look to make their way out of the pits and head onto the circuit. As we just try to see some of the cars making their way out. You can see it's a bit of a frantic dash out the pits here. And we do have 15 minutes, of course. Now, 15 minutes qualifying. What can you really expect in qualifying here? Well, as we said earlier, slipstream is going to be very important. Do we also expect that the circuit is going to potentially phase in over the course of the qualifying session? Given the fact that the lap time around here is just 1.5 minutes, or a little bit below 1.5 minutes, we could expect that as a result it will be over the course of the qualifying session. We should see our drivers do approximately somewhere in the region of 6 to 7 flying laps. There will be a couple of warm-up laps, there will be some cool-down laps of course for our drivers, where they'll want to cool down the brakes and the tyres, alternatively come into the pits and put a new set of tyres on, or alternatively just put some more fuel in the car if they've been running the car light. But I do suspect we are going to see this track really come to life as the qualifying session goes on. We've got nice sunny conditions as well, a little bit of cloud in the distance which is occasionally drifting over the circuit. But we should see quite a few qualifying laps come in, and I expect we are going to see the best laps right at the end. Excuse me, as we do just take a look way down the field, and everybody really raring to go tonight. We do have an absolute plethora of drivers taking to the circuit, as we always do, and we've been absolutely looking forward to this. And I've been speaking to a number of the drivers down in the paddock, and they've all been absolutely itching to go. And I think for the Apex Racing Academy guys in particular, they've all been itching to go even more when they did get the announcement this morning that it would be the case that their lobby would be broadcasted live once again. But still, it's the case that even if we're not broadcasting the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby live tonight, we're bringing you a look back tomorrow, and they no less important races at the end of the day. Everybody racing as part of the Next Gen Racing Series is absolutely treasured. As we ride on board here with what is Ben Hicks for a lap as he takes us around in the Ferrari 488 for GT3 Evo. And we're just riding on board here with the Pro-Am driver, the Ignium Motorsport driver. He was considered driver of the day last time out at Le Mans in the Pro-Am class. He's putting in an absolutely brilliant, consistent performance at Le Mans as he makes his way now up towards turn number 2 here. And we have heard recently as well, there have been some balance of performance adjustments to the cars. It is the case that the BMW M4 GT3 is no longer the fastest car in a straight line. Would you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? It has had additional weight added to the car, and as a result, it means that the fastest car in the straights right now, without a tow, is the Ferrari 488, which we're riding on board with, and we'll potentially see that Ferrari as a result really come alive tonight. That's the most notable thing we've heard about. We've also heard that the McLaren MP4 12C has continued to receive some performance improvements, or it's just the case that Håkon Grebstad is going faster and faster in it, and we did see that, of course, in our reference lap, but looking very smooth right now as Ben Hicks, he makes his way through the traffic ahead, moves out of the way there. I believe that was Dadswell just getting it a little bit wrong on the run into turn 5 there, the rear end just biting in the Audi R8, and because it's an off-camber corner, turn number 5, you have to be very careful about when you get back on the throttle, for the simple reason is you come over the crest and off the camber, it can cause the car to drift a bit wide. See the full Hicks, he's only got 2 more corners to go. It's a good lap so far, a nice smooth lap here, and I think this is definitely going to set him well for the pro-am grid as he makes his way through the final corner here, and our drivers will pick up a track limits penalty if they do cut over the yellow apex curve fully, if they put more than 2 wheels to the right of the centre point. But as Ben Hicks comes across the line here, a nice lap from Ben Hicks, the first lap on our timing board, and it's a 29.840. I don't think it's going to be the fastest lap of the evening, as we see Reese Carroll immediately, the pro drive, put in the fastest lap, but we've still got plenty more laps going. Reese Carroll, they're getting a lovely tow of the 2 drivers ahead of him, and I think Reese Carroll really capitalising there on a situation. He comes roaring up towards turn number 2 right now. It's good to see Reese Carroll back out on circuit once again. We do love to see the DDR driver taking 2 each and every circuit with ferocity but pinpoint precision at the same time. He is an absolute screw to dear for detail, and we love it. He does love analysing every corner in every little bit of detail. Also, Reese Carroll Photography has provided us with the thumbnail images for the broadcast. If you're wondering where we've got those stellar shots from, it's Reese Carroll Photography, and this is the man who takes the photos. If you do want to know a bit more about his craft, be sure to get in touch with him at Reese Carroll Photography, and he will be able to help out massively. As meanwhile, we continue to look around, and we see Kurt Van Acker just ahead at the moment, and he is the fastest of our AM drivers so far, but we've still got plenty more lap times to come in. We're not even a third of the way into the session yet. You can see that Matthew Addy has just taken the provisional pole in the AM class here with a 30.405, and we would expect, based on our classes and the nature of this circuit, the delta between our pole lap in the pro class and then to the AM class, we're not expecting a huge delta between the classes, and the simple reason for that is, and I hate to say it this way, as Billy Fletcher sets a provisional pole time of 29.2 both in class, but overall this circuit is quite straightforward in terms of its nature. It's effectively 3 heavy braking zones followed up by multiple trail braking zones, but it's about getting the car to rotate through the corner as quickly as possible and also picking up the tow, which is the difference between a good lap and the fastest lap, and that is why we'll see that delta. But I mark my words already, because we can see Luke McKeown has already set the first 28 in the session, and Matt Caruana making his way on through, and you'll notice that Matt Caruana is running a different livery tonight. He's changed teams, he's moved from Apex Tech Racing Lobby to Volante Racing, so running a new livery as a result, as we can see the Lamborghini Huracan driver, currently of course our championship leader in the pro class, albeit his lead was cut from 29 points to 21 points at round number 6, and he'll be looking to try and build that momentum up once again. He's only right now 700ths of a Luke McKeown, and there is a sizable delta between Matt Caruana and Luke McKeown versus Billy Fletcher, as we see Fletcher going a bit wide. They're coming out of turn 5. That will be a track limits warning for sure, as he makes his way then through turn number 6 through 7, and you see some smoke being kicked up there. I think we've had somebody get it a bit wrong. I'm not sure what's happened to Arjan Kregel, but we are hearing that he's had a bit of a moment out the circuit. And Arjan Kregel, I think, was the one who we saw the brake dust kick up of as he makes his way throughout turn number 8 and down into turn number 9 as he comes on through at this point. Kregel just pushing as hard as he possibly can here. We'll have to wait to see what he's able to do. I don't think it's going to be a slightly improved lap, but it was the case in that final sector where he got it all wrong. He has not improved in the end as he's completed his first flying lap and now goes on to a second one. But as we look from him to a bit further up the order in terms of qualifying right now, we see Jürgen Knocker here, currently in P21, that's P5 in class, as he makes his way on through once. Oh, goodness me, we've got a car going very, very wide. Is that Oystein Hereford in the background? Let's take a look. Oh, apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We seem to have a slight technical issue here with our replay system, so we won't be able to bring you that as a result. We will need to get that fixed for next time, or a little bit later on, as it seems as though our replay decided not to work out there. But apologies for that. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on. But for the meantime, I think it was Oystein Hereford who had a major moment, as I think we've also got Dirk Bounce there, getting it quite wrong and into the wall there on the exit of turn number 1. And just that little dip in the road causing the car to come loose as he's jumped to the pits. And now we have got Tom Dadswell on a mission here to try and improve, as well as all of our drivers are trying to find that lap time out on circuit, as we are almost at the halfway point of this qualifying session. And that's the case that Dadswell really pressing on as the Audi ARA driver comes charging it out to 2 and down towards 3 he goes here on the long straight once again. as he makes his way on through at this point. We can see just keeping it nice and smooth as he comes all the way down into turn 3. Does the Austrian Esport driver making his way on, rolling it off the brakes there, as is the classic thing to do. And as he now comes through turn number 4 and gets ready to go to turn number 5, just keeping it nice and simple for now. But we'll have to wait to see how much this lap is going to count come the end of things as he makes his way on through the corners still. Now coming down through turn at number 6 at this point in time, making his way on through it. No, we're looking at our sector times at the moment. Of course, you can't quite see these on screen at this time, but Dadswell not setting the timing screens alike compared to his previous best so far. But we are hearing from Dadswell in the YouTube chat there. Tom's had to use an old G27 wheel because his Fanatec Direct Drive wheel died last night. Well, that's very unfortunate for Dadswell, but it's still a case that he's going to make. Well, he's going to try and perform an uphill battle here. And what can the pro driver do as he comes across the line? It's not an improvement this time, but we'll hopefully see a little bit more from him later on. As right now we'll look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Callum Reid-Garton, our Pro-Am Championship leader, currently P3 overall, and putting a sizable amount of time between himself and the rest of the Pro-Am field. Well, second place man provisionally being Matthew Hodges right now, as Hodges makes his way on through the corners, and it does look as though Hodges is doing everything he can to try and keep things building up. He'll build up that momentum, and to be fair to Hodges, he qualifies where he is right now, and it was to finish as is. He'll have a very comfortable placement compared to P3 man Lucas Romano, who's all the way down in P13. Remember, our grid for the sprint race is determined by qualifying order, and we do not segregate based on class. So as a result, if a Pro-Am starts well inside all the pros, and then the rest of the Pro-Am field are a long way back, that's how the grid will start, and that's why this qualifying session is quite an interesting one, because there's a little bit of a strategic element within it, albeit you wouldn't necessarily think about it. And that strategic element is you want to try, if you're in one of the quote-unquote the lower classes, you want to try and qualify yourself away from the rest of your peers and actually get amongst some of the other class drivers, because you're not really going to target battling with them. But if you as a Pro-Am can keep, say, 2 pros behind you, because those 2 pros are battling one another, and then the next Pro-Am who's chasing you is behind them, you effectively have 2 drivers who act as your shield, albeit it's expected you're not going to fight too hard. And as we see they're going for a spin, that is, well, it looks like that's Jochen Seeger, as we see that it's also the case that Tom Edmunds there having to drift wide there out to turn 4 in order to survive an incident, but in returning to the circuit he's gone into the wall, and he's going to jump to the pits to repair that. As we meanwhile look at Ben Hicks making his way around once again from a third person perspective this time, and it is the case that the Ferrari driver just keeping it nice and clean right now and getting on with the mission as he rolls the car here through turn number 6 and into 7, looking very smooth. But let's just update our time screens here, folks, to show you how qualifying is going for all of the respective drivers as it currently stands, and give us a brief moment, and we'll just bring that up on the screen in terms of the grouping per class as we just show it now. And here you go. So our top 5 in the pro class at the moment are Luke McKeown ahead of Matt Caruana by 700ths of a second, and then you've got Billy Fletcher, who is almost a further 2 attempts down with Jason Landry and Reese Cowboy. Say that, and then Håkon Grebstad puts in a monster lap there to get himself well within arm's reach of pole position. He's definitely well within reach now of what is being on that front row. He is a very, very small way only attempt, as we see in the rearview picture. That's James Slade's going into the RP Motorsports driver, but Grebstad has promoted himself to P3, which means that now it is the case that Billy Fletcher P4 as Fletcher has spun out there, looks on the exit 6 into 7. We saw an incident earlier involving Austrian Hereford getting it horribly wrong, and now it looks as though Billy Fletcher has succumbed to a similar situation, as meanwhile Jason Landry currently P5, and then, well, looking at the Pro-Ams, meanwhile, well, no surprise, Callum Reid-Garton still in that provisional pole position. And when I say no surprise, it was a very strong lap from Callum Reid-Garton, although Matthew Hodges is starting to close that delta. He's got it down to 2.5 tenths now, and then Lucas Romano is a further 2 tenths off of Matthew Hodges, and really it is the case that Garton and Hodges putting in stellar performances in this qualifying session in the Pro-Ams. Romano P3, and he's gone for a spin there coming out of turn number 3, and then in P4 it is Ben Hicks, who right now a 10th off of Romano. Can he close the gap? And Phil McDougall completing our top 5. Then we do have a slight livery issue for Phil McDougall, which we will need to get fixed come the transition between the sprint and the feature race, but it is right now the 6R Project Black driver's livery is not displaying correctly, but we will get that fixed for you, ladies and gentlemen, a bit later on. Meanwhile, in the AM class here, we can see Jochen Seeger making his way on down towards turn number 3. He is currently our provisional pole sitter in the AM class. It is great to see the German back on form. He's had a very difficult opening half to his season, really struggled in the opening half compared to some of his peers, and as a result, he's building that momentum up once again. I think the tide is turning for the BMW driver as he now makes his way around this Red Bull Ring circuit, and he has got an advantage of 2.2 tenths over Matthew Addy, who was looking very strong, to be fair, in the build-up to this qualifying session. And then we've got Jürgen Nocker, who's down in P3, and then Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen in P4, followed by Alexander Vatat, the two Danes that complete our top 5, the two Switchback Motorsport drivers here. And well, it's the case, Vatat only 200ths off of his teammate, and it's Gus Franken who's just outside that battle, a 10th further down as the RP Motorsport driver. As we now look back to the overall standings, and we return to that overall picture for you. And what you can see when we filter in the classes between one another, it's the case that Jochen Seeger really has put himself very far clear of his peers right now. He has got the best part of 4 Pro-Ams and 1 Pro between himself and Matthew Addy, and that is stellar, albeit we've got 2 minutes of this qualifying session left to go. So as a result, it could be the case that we will see it all chop and change yet, but we will wait and see as he makes his way up the hill and makes his way in towards turn number 2. Now we are hearing some drivers are having a bit of a difficult qualifying session. Navarro Debova, the younger member of the Debova family racing, of course. Navarro being the youngster, the son of Jeremy Debova, his father racing the Pro-Am class here today, whereas Navarro racing in the Am class. He's just trying to get some temperature in the tyres right now, and he's trying to go on to a lap here. And we're going to stay with the Audi R8 drivers. He makes his way on through turn number 8 and down towards turn number 9 and see what he can achieve as he goes on to what is effectively his final flying lap, as we do see Øystein Herford improves there to P10 overall, and that is P8 in class. So let's ride on board with the Audi R8 driver, Navarro Debova, as he takes us around for his final flying lap. So making his way up into the braking zone for turn number 1. Very smooth, but a little bit wide of apex there. And you can see that's cost him the ability to attack the exit as much as he wanted to. And instead he rode the sausage curve and just kept 2 wheels on the right hand side of the yellow marker as Matt Caruana jumps into provisional pole overall by an advantage of 2.5 hundredths as we continue to watch Navarro Debova now come down into the braking zone for turn number 2. Very smooth transition there from the brake to the throttle as he came through the corner, but again just going a bit wide and going up onto the yellow sausage curve, and that unsettles the car and costs him the ability to get traction out the corner as he now rolls his way down towards turn number 3. And as he comes down to the downhill braking zone here, will he go all in under braking? He does. He brakes the 100 metre board literally at the maximum limit, gets the car stopped very nicely as there's a car spun ahead. That's Jürgen Nocker who's into the wall, I believe, and meanwhile we continue to see here, well no, that is Jürgen Nocker and Phil McDougall also off. I'm wondering if the two were involved in an incident, but meanwhile Navarro Debova here very smooth into turn number 5, and he keeps it in the track limits as Tom Edmunds improves to P6 overall. And as we continue to watch here, the youngster makes his way up through, drifts a little bit wide there, a little bit of mid-apex understeer as he drifted away from the corner, now coming through 7 and into 8 and just continues to press on as he makes his way now down into turn number 8. And as he rolls the car through here, can he get things nailed up through the final corner? It's been a reasonable lap. He's been faster than his previous best in Sector 2, but a bit down in Sector 1. He comes across the timeline. This is quite critical to get him away from P11 in class. He crosses the line, and well, in the end, it's not enough. In fact, he backed off at the end. He was not improving, and he called it a day. Now, meanwhile, speaking of calling it a day, Matt Caruana's into the pits after a 28.876. Can this man, the fastest man at the moment, really, in terms of the rounds that we have seen since he's been participating, the Logitech G Autos eSport driver, Luke McKeown, who goes onto the gravel and into the wall. That's a disaster for McKeown. He'll still be starting P2, but that was pushing it a bit too far, and he's lost it as Tom Edmunds has got it wrong somewhere out on the circuit. And this qualifying session is practically an end. We've only got 3 drivers, with 2 drivers left to finish their qualifying laps. Well, in fact, 1, and it's Lucas Romano, but I think even this is an aborted lap, and he's coming on in, which means Matt Caruana takes pole in the Pro class, and Callum Reid-Garton qualifies in P4 in the Prime, P4 overall and pole position in the Prime class, and it's Jochen Seeger who is qualified in P16 overall, what is P1 in the AM class here. So pole position for the Next Gen Racing Orange driver in what is the AM class here, but it's the case that our pole sitters in each of their respective classes, so the Prime and the AMs in particular, sandwiching themselves among their Pro and Prime peers, and now that is an achievement and a half, and Jochen Seeger coming back all guns blazing. Well, you love to see it, as meanwhile Deegan Fairclough right now out on circuit, but I believe he's just taken the car out here to get a little bit more track time. This will not be counted as a permitted lap, given the fact that we've already seen that timer pass. So right now we're waiting for Fairclough to make his way back on in, and I think Hackenschott is just parked up here on the run into turn 1. They're not moving that car anytime soon, but what a qualifying session. I think really the biggest perhaps surprise is in the end Matt Caruana taking that pole position for Luke McKeown literally at death, and McKeown getting it wrong in the end right on that final lap when he was pushing to limit and just went a little bit too deep in towards the apex apex of turn number 7, and he lost the car as a result. But we are going to see very shortly that qualifying order. And other surprises, well, it is the case that we've seen a number of pro-am drivers putting some stellar qualifying performance. It's not just Callum Reid-Garton that deserves the honours, but Matthew Hodges and Lucas Romano and Anthony Beck as well. But let's take you through that grid then, ladies and gentlemen, in the run-up now to the race. So as we can see, Matt Caruana takes us away from the overall pole position with Luke McKeown line up alongside him on the front row. Håkon Grebstad joined by Callum Reid-Garton, our pole position man for the Pro-Am class today. On the second row, Billy Fletcher and Tom Edmunds in row number 3. Jason Landry and Rhys Cowan row number 4. Mark Fletcher and the Pro-Am driver Matthew Hodges completing our 5th row, with Matthew Hodges putting in one of his season best qualifying performances there. Austrian Hereford and Kenny Hermans on row number 6. Outside our top 6 rows, Lucas Romano and Anthony Beck on row number 7. Deegan Fairclough joined by Jochen Siegert on row number 8, with Jochen Siegert getting pole position in the AM class and his season best performance in qualifying today. A brilliant job from the German. Tom Dadswell and Ben Hicks on the 9th row, and our top 10 rows completed by Robert Desunic and Phil McDougall, completing our top 20 overall. Daniel Holman and Matthew Addy lined up on row number 11, with Jean-Louis Desschans and Hacken Schott on row number 12, and then we've got Jeremy Dover and Dirk Bouts on row 13, Morten Usahus and Jürgen Nocker on row 14, Didi D. Blaming and Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen on row number 15, Alexander Batak and Gus Franken on row 16, Matt Emmons and George Bland on row 17, Kurt Van Hoenack and James Slates on row number 18, and then completing our final 2 rows, Arjen Craig and Navarro de Bova, both having very difficult qualifying sessions, and Travis Linscombe Hatfield being listed, and Stefan Tim Koopmans also being listed here, and I do believe it's the case that both drivers there ending up in, well, I believe Stefan Tim Koopmans may have had some issues, but it's the case Travis Linscombe Hatfield not in this lobby. He should be in the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby. But with our grid covered, we now return to the racing action and the build up to it, as we just bring up here all of the data for you, ladies and gentlemen, and we are getting ready to go racing very, very shortly, and all our drivers absolutely itching to go any moment now, as we are just waiting, and we are just going to reload our overlay timing screens here, as we do have some slight technical issues which have just been alleviated, and it looks as though there Luke McKeown getting a bit of a jump on the safety car there. I think expecting the safety car to go a little bit sooner than expected. Remember, this is a partial rolling start, it is not the full rolling start here, and now as Luke McKeown pulls away, and it's Matt Caruana who takes us away from pole here. All of our drivers making their way up towards turns 8 and 9 and getting ready to go racing. Indeed, we're expecting quite the race here. Over 15 minutes the Red Bull Ring to kick off the second half of the season, and it will be Matt Caruana who takes us away from that pole position. And now with only one more corner to go, our drivers are required to go on the start-finish line. Let's wait and see how it all kicks off for the sprint race of round number 7 in the Apex Racing Academy lobby. Let's lights out and away we go for the sprint race at the Red Bull Ring with Matt Caruana and Luke McKeown side by side immediately on the start there. As you can see on the inside, we've got one of the Ferraris parts on the inside. They go charging up the hill into turn number 1 as they make their way through. Håkon Grebstad trying to siphon his way into the battle further back. There's been a major incident involving multiple drivers already. We will try to dissect that very shortly, as I think that's Tom Edmunds in the middle of the circuit, and oh goodness me, that is a Ferrari that has been launched into the air, and also I think that's Matt Edmunds who's been involved in that incident as they all come charge up the hill towards turn number 2. Now as they all make their way through the corner here, it's the case we've got a wayward car. I believe that's why the 6 are Project Black machines getting it very wrong and clipping the car with them, as we also got Anthony Beck off the circuit there as they all make their way through turn 2 and down towards turn number 3. It has been a scrappy start for a number of drivers, but we can see McKeown and also Caruana exchanging places like it's going out of style. Meanwhile, Callum Reid-Garton's had a good start there with Billy Fletcher also getting in along the action, with Håkon Grebstad losing out by comparison as they make their way down to turn number 5. They come on through into the left hand here. A bit further back we do have the situation. We've got Mark Fletcher in P7 chasing after Jason Landry. Then we've got Deegan Fairclough down in P8, then Tom Dadswell in P9. There's Lucas Romano here, who I believe may have actually jumped the start. We did see a Ferrari going very slowly on the inside into turn 1. Me may have misinterpreted the start procedure, but right now in P10, P2 in class. Then we've got Rhys Cowan in P11 chasing after right now. Hands off fend off. What is Robert Desunic who's going to try and go round the outside, but will he be able to get on round? It doesn't look so, but Rhys Cowan's gone very deep on the brakes and he's missed his braking point as a result, and he's had to stop the car dead as now all the field come roaring on through to complete the opening lap. So after one lap, it is Luke McKeown leading ahead of Matt Caruana in P2 with Billy Fletcher in P3. These three pro drivers all battling for the championship lead, followed by Callum Reid-Garton, the prime driver in P4, just staying in the way of some of the pro drivers here as we see Håkon Grebstad in P4 in the pro class, but P5 overall. Jason Landry P6, followed by Mark Fletcher P7. Then we've got Dean Fairclough P8, Tom Dadswell P9, Lucas Romano P10, our second place man in the prime class, with what is Robert Desunic further back in P11, Daniel Holman P12, Phil McDougall P13, Ben Hicks P14, and Jeremy DeBova completing our top 15. The leader of the AM class, meanwhile, we can see here is Matthew Addy, who's under pressure from Hackenschott and Jochen Seeger here, as we see Hackenschott going for the move on Seeger, who will not be too happy as they emerge from turn 2, because he would have wanted the opportunity to go after Matthew Addy, and as they make the way, charging on down right now, it's the case that Addy trying to make the breakaway here as the German driver's had a difficult start and now needs to try and navigate his way back past what is Hackenschott, alternatively wait for the opportunity for Schott to bring Addy to him. Meanwhile, we've got Alexander Batak here holding on to P3 right now within his class, of the AM class, that is Jürgen Knockert behind in P4, and then George Band in P5 as they make their way through. George Band looking a little bit mangled there, and I do wonder whether he was involved in one of the early incidents that we did see kick off and cause quite a kerfuffle further down the field. We will try and dissect what happened very shortly for you, ladies and gentlemen, at that race start, because there was a major incident. It's only fair we do take a look at it very shortly. But meanwhile, we look from the battery further down the field to a bit further up the field, and Matt Caruana back into the lead for the time being as they complete lap number 2 here. They've still got just under 12 minutes to go, and meanwhile a bit further back we can see Billy Fletcher now getting a little bit competitive here, starting to unleash the beast within as they make the way through. You can see the two Luxem 24 of MVE Sports machines of Fletcher in the pro class and then Reid-Garton in the prime class, just staying in formation right now. It's the case the prime driver will not want to upset his pro teammate as they make the way up into the braking zone, but looking further back you can see Håkon Grebstad here making the move, and Fletcher having to open the steering wheel there when he wanted to turn it in as Håkon Grebstad tried to go for the move. He couldn't quite get the 2-for-1 special and instead now has to wait once again. Meanwhile, further back we see Jason Landry here as we run on board the gearbox of Jason Landry. He's just pulling away in the Delta Motorsport Ferrari versus what is Mark Fletcher behind us. Mark Fletcher's got some pressure and you can see it's getting closer and closer, and it's the form of Deegan Fairclough who wants an opportunity to go. Oh, goodness me! And that's Billy Fletcher! Billy Fletcher across the middle of the circuit. What on earth has happened to Billy Fletcher, who's had a spin and a half and he's now off circuit? Well, he's been involved in some sort of incident, but we'll have to try and understand what exactly happened there, and let's take a look back. Well, it looks as though he went wide out of the corner. In fact, you can see it looks as though he lost it under his own initiative, and well, Billy Fletcher just having a moment of pushing too hard. I'm not sure if there was contact, but it's cost him massively. He's down to P19 overall, and that is P9 in class. But meanwhile, looking from him to a bit further up the road, we can see Daniel Holm here, the bright esports driver, trying to hold off Phil McDougall, who's chasing after him, and Phil McDougall trying to pursue what is P3 and a step on the podium for the prime class as they make their way through. Jason Landry with a slow down by looks of things, just returning to pace right now, a bit ahead of them. But we look back here to Daniel Holman, the bright esports driver, the Swede, putting in a very strong performance so far. He's still got 10 minutes of this race to go, and he's trying to build up as much pace as possible as they make their way down. But we are going to take a look back at what happened at the very start of this race with regards to the major incident which involved a number of drivers, and let's try and dissect it for you, ladies and gentlemen, as we do see that right now Phil McDougall having to go defensive versus Ben Hicks as they make their way on through, and as they come through the corner, no change between these guys right now as they make the way on down towards what is turn number 3. But here, let's take a look back at what happened. So unfortunately, we are having a slight issue with regards to getting you that replay at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to try and fix this as soon as possible. My apologies for this. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we do have a slight technical issue on the day. We are, however, going to work around this. We will very shortly bring you back. But it would seem that, unfortunately, we do have some technical issues which do not want to go away any time soon. So be right back very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. We will be no more than 2 minutes. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Apologies for that. We have identified the issue. We can't bring you replays at this point in time, it will see, but we can, however, bring you the live racing action as it's coming to you right now, and we'll do apologise for that. But at the halfway point of this sprint race, at this point in time, it is the case that right now Luke McKeown is back into the lead with Callum Reid-Garton chasing after him. We do appear to have missed something major that has happened with regards to Matt Caruana dropping a position, albeit he's not too far back from Callum Reid-Garton as they make their way up the hill here. And Callum Reid-Garton, by looks of things, potentially is going on for an opportunity to take an overall win, which would be something else in its entirety as they make their way through turn number 2. They come roaring on through, but meanwhile, as they make their way through the corner, looking further back down the order, we can see it is the case that Mark Fletcher continuing to chase after Jason Landry. Deegan Fairclough just a bit further up the road, flashing his lights. We saw as he made his way through the camera there, but as they come roaring on down the hill once again here into turn number 3, no change between these guys, and Tom Dadswell having to hold off Robert Sunik as this point as they make their way through the corners. They come charging on through as they make their way through turn number 3 and 4 and up into 5. It's the case that they're all settling down into an order. Meanwhile, further down the order, in this case Phil McDougall here battling with Ben Hicks as they come through turn number 5, and you can see Ben Hicks here going for the switchback through 5 and into 6, and as they make their way now through what is turn number 6 and up into 7. No change between these two as they come roaring on through, but it is looking as though at this point in time Ben Hicks trying to get a move on here as McDougall goes defensive immediately into the corner, and behind you can see that Daniel Holmer, who's lost out the places to them as they come on through. Well, it's the case that Daniel Holmer right now trying to put that pressure on, but he can't seem to find it at this point in time, and instead has to wait and watch as we ride on board here with the BMW M4 driver from Sweden as they come across the line. You can see how Ben Hicks literally taking to that line on the right hand side, and Phil McDougall going defensive as a result as they come into the heavy braking zone here. And well, it's the case that Hicks goes very deep, and Holmer capitalises here as they come roaring up towards turn number 2 now. Now, which one of them is going to be the braver on the brakes? And of course, this is bringing in the rear of the camera shot Desschans and Jeremy DeBola into the battle as they make their way up towards the braking zone for turn number 2. That's the case. Ben Hicks does not go for it, but look at Jean-Louis Desschans, who comes in all guns blazing. A bit of contact there. Ben Hicks tapping the rear of Daniel Holmer, who had to get the car stopped and parked it on Apex, and as a result now Jean-Louis Desschans, who we haven't really talked about too much since the start of this race, now getting right into this fight as they make their way down towards turn number 3. I'm hearing Adrian Krebs had a major moment this season in dropping the way down the order, but Jean-Louis Desschans going all the way around the outside at turn 3. There's only one way that's going to go, and he's going to have to back off there to make the corner, and as a result Jeremy DeBola now gains the place and up into P5 in the Pro class and up to P13 overall as they make their way now down through turn number 5 once again. But as they come down towards turn number 6, we'll have to wait to see where it's the case Desschans is able to push his way back on through. Indeed, Daniel Holmer is able to find a way back past Phil McDougall as Lucas Romano, who was ahead of those guys, has now fallen back down to P18 overall. That's P8 in class. And meanwhile, in the AM class, it's the case that Matthew Addy, he's still got himself clear, quite sizably clear of his peers, as Billy Fletcher is now trying to carve his way back up the order after the spin earlier on at turn number 3. As he makes his way past Hackenschott, going round the outside through turn number 9. A very uncommon overtake, but he's been able to make it work. But meanwhile, in the AM class, you can see him continuing his pursuit of what is Matthew Addy as they make their way up towards what is turn number 1. But he can't quite find a way into this battle as they make their way through the first corner. And as they come running through this time, I think it's the case that you can see just waiting really for the drivers ahead of him to pull Matthew Addy to him. But he's running out of time today. He's got less than 4 minutes to go. It's 3 more laps, including the one they're currently on. I think he needs to consider really putting the gas down right now. It's going to be good points all the same, but if he wants that win, he's now going to need to close up, because I don't think he's going to be closing that gap any other way. As meanwhile, further up the road, we can see Mark Fletcher in a bit of contact with Jason Landry by the looks of things. I think the two drivers have had a moment where they've made contact, and as a result, in making that contact, it's now one of those situations where I think they are going to be racing to the end, but I do wonder whether there's damage on Jason Landry's car. We did see him lift up a little bit and a little bit of smoke come out. Unfortunately, we can't bring you the replay at the moment due to the technical issues we identified. We will get those fixed for what is the feature race, ladies and gents. Unfortunately, technical issues on the line, but this time it's not stopping us from watching the race in action as we see Landry here giving that pursuit to what is Mark Fletcher all the same, as they now make their way down with 2 more laps to go after they exit turn number 9 here. And indeed, it's anyone's guess how they're going to play it out, as meanwhile Daniel Holmer has found a way past Phil McDougall into turn number 8. He's had the overspeed and he's got the job done, but Phil McDougall trying to come back at him here on the run through 9, and you could see both drivers there were disrupted racing lines as we ride on board the gearbox here. Daniel Daniel Holmer with the crumpled front end of Phil McDougall's car as they make their way into the braking zone for one, and McDougall going for the move on the inside. He's looking for it. Oh, goodness me, there's contact between the two of them. I think Holmer turned by the looks of things, although I'm not sure it did look as though it was a tap. And as a result, now Ben Hicks and Jeremy DeBoer seeing this as their opportunity to try and come through. Will they be able to, or will they be too busy battling one another as they make their way up into the braking zone? You can see Hicks defends the inside, DeBoer in the middle of the two, and it's a squeeze. And as they come on through, DeBoer manages to get it done. It wasn't the cleanest, but it's a case that it's a Moses manoeuvre all the same, and he managed to squeeze between the two of them, and Jeremy DeBoer up into P2 in the Pro-Am class there with a move. Well, whether you think it was brave or foolish, there's one thing about it, he was full of confidence and he got it done as he makes his way round through turn at number 3. Meanwhile, a bit further down the order, I can tell you, it's the case that Matthew Hodges right now making his way past George Bland, who moves clearing out the way there, does the AM driver versus the Pro-Am driver. Matthew Hodges currently P9 in class, and then meanwhile further up the road, I'm hearing as they go on, well, they come to the end of the penultimate lap, and the white flag will be out as they come across the start-finish line this time around. It is the case, Luke McKeown, there's the white flag waving. It's Luke McKeown versus Matt Caruana, with Callum Reid-Garton just watching on here, securing the Pro-Am lead, and will these two battling for the lead of the Pro class and overall. You can see Matt Caruana not letting this one go as they both run wide, then McKeown more so than Caruana, and as they make their way up the hill right now, both drivers are nowhere near picking up a drive-through penalty. I can definitely tell you that right now as they make their way up the hill, and as they go charging up towards turn at number 2, it's going to be McKeown on the inside, it's Caruana on the outside, under braking they go. Caruana's looking for the cutback, but he can't quite find it here, and instead has to wait for another opportunity as McKeown literally weaves from side to side. He's allowed to do this a couple of times, too excessively, and he'll get a warning, of course, from our stewards. But as he makes his way down towards turn 3, he's trying to break the slipstream, and as they come down into the braking zone, no change this time. McKeown going defensive as possible here, as meanwhile a bit further back, Mark Fletcher on the inside. Well, I say it was on the inside, it's no, it's Deegan Fairclough on the inside of Mark Fletcher as they come through turn number 3, and it's Deegan Fairclough who gains that P4 in the Pro class, P5 overall. But meanwhile, between our two leaders right now, no change between them as it currently stands, but McKeown really having to dance to keep that Audi ahead of the Lamborghini as they make their way now through turn number 7, 2 more corners to go, and as they make their way around through turn number 8, it's the case as they come up the hill and down into the dip here. McKeown goes defensive and he breaks it, but Caruana looks at the cutback. McKeown gets the car stop, but you can see how slow they're going in the fact that Callum Reid-Garton wants a piece of it, but as they emerge on the final corner, it's a sprint to the finish. McKeown literally blocks as much as he can to the inside, he takes the win. Well, it's Caruana who takes the win over McKeown in the end by what is, by looks of things, literally a hair's whip, and Callum Reid-Garton comes home in P3, Håkon Grebstad P4, Deegan Fairclough P5, then it's Jason Landry P6, Mark Fletcher P7, Tom Dadswell P8, Robert Asuni P9, Billy Fletcher P10, recovering to P10, P9 in class. Jeremy DeBoer comes home P2 in the Pro-Am class, ahead of Håkon Schott in P3 in the Pro-Ams, and then Ben Hicks and Lucas Romano completing the top 5 of the Pro-Ams. Austrian Evan in P15 overall. After that difficult start to the race, Jean-Louis Desschans in P16, and it's Matthew Addy who takes the win in the AM class ahead of Jochen Siegert, who finished in P19 overall. Daniel Holmer between the two of them. Jochen Siegert there just behind him. I think he'll be happy with that P2, but also ruin what was an opportunity to try and get the win in the AM class. And it's Jürgen Nocker who came home in P3 in the AM class, P21 overall, with Matthew Hodges between him and Jochen Siegert. George Bland missing out in the top 3 in the AM class, the P4 for him. Dirt bounce between him and Navarro DeBoer. Navarro DeBoer in the end recovering up to P5 after what was a very difficult qualifying session, but a good job for Navarro DeBoer to get up there, and that completes our top 24. Reese Carroll P25 after that off earlier on in the race. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for our sprint race, and don't go anywhere. We'll be back very shortly for post-race interviews with our winners of the sprint race. You won't want to miss them. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we are back then for our post-race interviews with our race winners in each of the classes, and we'll be kicking off with our Pro-Am winner, Callum Reid-Garton. But just before we do, I just want to clarify, by the way, Luke McKeown was the winner in the Pro class. It did look as though he crossed the line ahead of Matt Caruana, but for some reason our timing screens decided to say it was Matt Caruana who took the win, so it's McKeown who was the winner there, and apologies for that. That's out of our control. The time screen decided to glitch, but we can just confirm McKeown was the winner in the Pro class. But let's hear from Callum Reid-Garton, our winner in the Pro-Am class. Hello, Callum. Can you hear me?
Hi, mate.
Callum, a solid drive from yourself in the sprint race and a brilliant return to the series after the Christmas break. How's it feel to not just win the sprint race at Red Bull Ring, but also to be right up there challenging for the overall win as it happens?
Oh, no. Great. Brilliant, mate. Wicked crack.
Well, it all started off very smoothly, and in qualifying, it looked as though as well you really nailed the lap and was very close to being right up there on the front row.
Yeah, close. I pitted for tyres, tried to get a better lap in. There was an extra 10th there, but I just kept getting off track at turn 1, so yeah, I couldn't quite pull the lap together.
And we'll translating that from qualifying, which was a very impressive qualifying lap, even with that 10th being missing, into the race. What was the plan in the race, given it seemed you had the pace to be challenging even your teammate Billy Fletcher at one point? Was it a bit of an awkward sort of, do I push them hard or do I just sit behind them? Just take us through what was going through your mind.
I was racing my own race, but at the same time, I was trying to help Bill at the same time for overall position, because obviously I had Håkon behind me, and obviously it would have been like a three-way battle for the lead essentially between the pro guys. So I just tried to help Billy out as much as I could during the first couple of laps, and then I was just racing my own race, and then I just found myself on pace for the guys in front. So yeah, just stuck with it and went with it.
Oh, very smart strategy, and in the end, it rewarded you very nicely. Although I do have to ask, with regards to the final two laps when McKeown and Caruana were really chipping time out of one another and driving defensively, were you looking at opportunities to try and send it up the inside at a quarter and potentially be our first overall winner who's not a pro driver?
Oh, mate, 100%. Like, the last lap, like, I got a dirty cutback and I went for it, but those guys just had a little bit more. They were a little bit too far in front, so. But yeah, it was a good race. It was a good race.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. And now looking ahead to the feature race, what's the plan given you'll be starting from the back of the Pro-Am group?
Just keep it clean, mate. Stay out of trouble. Take it as it comes. Hopefully, we'll try and get another win.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature, but until then, congratulations on the win in the sprint race, and we'll see you out on the circuit once again very shortly.
Nice one, Paul. Thank you.
So here and there from Callum Reid-Garton, very happy with his performance. And indeed, you could hear that little bit of cheekiness with him wanting to take the fight to the pro drivers right at the end there, but couldn't quite find the way to get it done. But speaking of getting it done, we now head over to Matthew Addy for a post-race interview of our AM winner. As we just bring him into the interview room very shortly. Hello, Matthew. Can you hear me?
I can, yes, Paul.
Matthew, a brilliant drive from yourself to finish first of all the AM drivers in the sprint race. How's it feel to return to the top step?
Yeah, it's a good feeling, to be honest. I didn't have much hope for this race, but yeah, it turned out pretty well, to be honest.
So just dissecting it down into its component parts, you're saying you didn't have too much hope for the race. It was a solid qualifying session for yourself. It wasn't quite perhaps the pace to match Jochen Seeger, who seemed to put quite the field between himself and yourself. What was going through your mind in qualifying, and was it the case that was more out there, or was it sort of the best you could do given the circumstances?
There's definitely more out there. I put a good time in during the practice, and I was following Jochen at the end, to be honest, to try and get a better lap. It needed that toe on the last bit, but I just couldn't get it in the end. But yeah, I was happy with where I ended up in the qualifying, but I think I could have done better.
And in translating that through into the race, we saw, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 5 drivers between yourself and Jochen. It was 4 Pro-Ams and also a pro driver between yourselves. But I think there was a bit of a mix-up with the start. A driver ahead, I think, was out of sequence. Did that contribute to you getting a lot closer to Jochen, or was it more of a case that the pros and the Pro-Ams were sort of pulling him towards you?
A combination of both, to be honest. There was a bit of contact at the end between a few of the drivers, which did hold me up. I was just lucky to get through all that without any contact. Jochen's a good driver, and I think I could have kept the gap if it wasn't for the other drivers.
I see. And with regards to keeping that gap, obviously, it seems as though you sort of came alive with more of the pace in the race. Are you feeling that's where you're perhaps a bit stronger here at Red Bull Ring compared to qualifying, rather than it being the one-lap shootout more over the course of, say, the 15 minutes or the 60 minutes that are coming up? That's where the pace lies?
I do, to be honest. Yeah, I love the track. It's one of my favourite tracks. I've probably raced the most on this track, to be honest. And just settling down, keeping a good, consistent pace is where I'm focusing on at the moment.
I see. And now looking ahead to the feature race, you'll be starting not quite right at the back of the Anfield, but you'll be starting more towards the back than some of the others. What's the plan for the feature race?
I don't really have one, to be honest. Just pick them off one by one if possible. I think I may come stuck between some fast drivers. It's not a lot of overtaking opportunity at this track, but just see as it comes, really.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on in the feature race, but until then, congratulations on the win in the sprint, and we'll see you out on the tarmac again very shortly.
Thanks, Paul.
So hearing there from Matthew Addy, very happy and pleased with the result. And as you're saying there, qualifying didn't quite work out, but he found the pace in the race, plus also the mix-up at the start, particularly with, as we saw one driver being out of sequence. I believe it was one of our Pro-Am drivers getting out of sequence. And as a result, there was a bit of an incident going into turn number 1, which we couldn't quite bring you back, but that helped mix up the field to a degree. And also Addy just deploying that pace and taking the fight to Jochen Seeger and then making the breakaway. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on come the feature. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to bring you a post-race interview of Luke McKeown. He's currently just making his way back into the car and getting ready to go racing. But we do apologise for the confusion about the winner. But Luke McKeown was the winner of the Plocast in the end, as it did actually show us on our screen in terms of where the cars were versus the timing screen. So we are, if we see that again, we're just going to rely on what our eyesight tells us and then fix things up later. But with all of our drivers now getting ready to go racing once again, we will be right back very shortly at what is approximately 5 to 9, if not just after. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, get yourself set, grab yourself a cup of tea or a liquid refreshment, because we're not too far away from the build-up to the feature race and you won't want to miss it. We'll be right back very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back now with the build-up to the feature race, the 60-minute race, the second race of our proceedings for this evening, and it will be the case. There'll be all guns blazing from our drivers, with a strategic element, of course, with that mandatory pit stop. As right now, all of our drivers are getting ready once again to go racing very shortly, and are right now making their way around the Red Bull Ring circuit in practice conditions for 3 more minutes before we form the grid for our second race. Now, in the downtime, of course, we have been looking into the issue with regards to replays. I'm sorry to say that we've been in touch with the tech support guys. There's no quick fix for it. We're going to have to work on it outside of tonight's proceedings. So there will be no replays come the feature race today. So if anything happens, we will try and catch it on the screen. But if we do miss it, we do apologise in advance, because it is one of those situations at the moment where we just do not seem to be able to use replays. But it does seem as though it is a known issue with the software, and as we are now just waiting, we will wait and see. But there was a recent update as well to our broadcasting software, and well, that has been reported as perhaps the cause. But enough talking about issues, and let's talk more about the racing that lies ahead. We can see that right now Deegan Fairclough making his way down towards turn number 6, and as he makes his way on through, looking very comfortable indeed is the UK driver as he makes his way now up towards turn number 8. Sorry, not Fairclough, my apologies, I must pronounce it correctly, it's Fairclough, as he makes his way through turn number 8. It's something I did resolve that I would have pronounced correctly for Fairclough as he makes his way all the way around the circuit right now. As he comes on through, we look back in the chat here, we do see a bit of discussion with regards to the incident that occurred on the open lap in the sprint race. We see Ed Knight and Driver Dead 12 there talking about it, and indeed it was the situation. I believe there has been quite a bit of a discussion between the two races as to what happened between a number of drivers, and I think, well, I'm not going to point fingers, but I think one of the big names, we did see Lucas Romano in particular going very slowly into turn 1 on the inside of a lot of drivers and gain a lot of ground right at the start, and I think he might have been heavily involved in that incident. But the stewards will take a look at that, of course, as we just see right now Lucas Romano going around and onto another lap. The RP Motorsports Juniors driver here, just getting his head down and getting on with the racing, which is what it's all about at the end of the day, as he makes his way on through and up towards turn number 2. As he heads up, I'm just checking in with the organisers to see if there's anything further at this point in time. It does not look as though, so it's as a result, we will be expecting racing to proceed as planned very shortly. Within under a minute, we'll be starting to form the grid. But the big talking points, really, with regards to the sprint race and what we can expect, is we've got a number of drivers there who have had a bit of a moment coming out to turn number 3. The big talking points, it would seem, with regards to the sprint race, we saw just how quick the action came, and particularly just how potent the slipstream was on the straights. We even saw that from qualifying. But now, given the fact that slipstream is so critical and so powerful around here at the Red Bull Ring, will that translate into a load of fuel-saving aspects in the feature race, where drivers who are behind, such as, for example, you see Jason Landry here tucked in very briefly behind them at Change B machine, the number 273 car of what is their Jürgen Nocker? Will it be the case that they'll be running in straight line formation into a number of the corners to fuel save, with the driver behind short shifting to stay behind? Or will we see a lot of aggressive overtakes? That is what we'll have to wait and find out. Tom Edmunds, of course, one of those drivers, RD Simsport, who had a difficult race. As we get the transition over to the grid right now, having that difficult race, can he bounce back this time around? Well, without further ado, let's bring you that grid, ladies and gentlemen. Our grid for this feature race is as follows. Deegan Fairclough starting first with Kenny Hermans alongside him. This is, of course, the Pro Class that kicks us off, and it'll be Robert DeSudik and Tom Dads will line up on the second row, Mark Fletcher and Jason Landry on row number 3, Oystein Hereford and Rees Cowan on row number 4, and Luke McKeown and Tom Edmunds on row number 5. Håkon Grebstad and Billy Fletcher on row number 6, and then we've got Matt Caruana ahead of what I believe we are missing. No, we're not missing anybody here. We've got everybody accounted for. I thought it was an even number of pro drivers, but my site has deceived me. Matt Caruana starting P at 13, the last star pro drivers, with James Slates kicking off our pro-am group, and he will start 2 seconds behind Matt Caruana. Hackett Shot and DDD Valaming starting in what is P at 15, P16, with Phil McDougall and Anthony Beck P17 and P18. Daniel Hummon, Lucas Romano P19 and P20, with Dirt Bouts and Jeremy DeBova P21, P22. Ben Hicks and Matthew Hodges P23, P24. As we are seeing this formation lap get underway, and then it's Jean-Louis Desschans and Callum Reid-Garton completing our programs before Jürgen Nocker starts us off from the front row of the AM class. Gus Franklin alongside him, Navarro DeBova and Morten Oosterhuis. Then on the second row of the AMs, Arjun Gregor and George Bland on the third row. Kurt Van Hoen and Alexander Patak on the fourth row, translated into row number 17. Matthew Addy and Jochen Seeger, and then last but not least, Matt Emmons and Stefan Gamble Rasmussen on the backmost row for the AMs and our leaders in the AM class. But now, as we're looking ready to go racing, we can see here it's Kenny Hermans who builds us up there to go racing with the Pro class first and foremost as they get underway. And it will be the Pros who go under the bridge at the start-finish line here as they make the way on down through the corner. You can see Dadswell there staying a bit further back, not too close, but I think he'll close up now. And Deegan Fairclough as well as they make the way on through. And now they're about to get racing as we can see that Deegan Fairclough has gone now. I think he's got the jump on Kenny Hermans as they go racing. And you can see Robert Desunic here in a free wide situation with Hermans and also Dadswell. Dadswell in the middle as they come on through the corner. And you can see a bit further back here how it's the case. Mark Fletcher in there as well as all the drivers make the way on through. Although we have, oh goodness me, we've got a driver wide, that's Håkon Grebstad. Meanwhile, we can see all our Pro-Am drivers coming in through now as Tom Edmunds takes evasive action at very short notice. Well done to Tom for doing so. That could have been catastrophic. But as the Pro-Ams come roaring up the field here, you can see as they make the way up into turn number 2, all charging up in formation. It's the situation where Håkon trying to defend hard here. He's got James Hayes and Phil McDougall trying to make the move, and it's McDougall who tries to go through the inside as they come roaring on through into turn number 2. As they make the way up the hill, it's the case. We can see that further back, Lucas Romano here holding on into what is P5 right now in the Primes. As meanwhile in the AM class, a bit further back, we can see it's Gus Franken who's currently holding onto the lead of the AM class, the RP Motorsport seniors driver. He's ahead of Mortinis Oosthuis. As you can see, Franken looks up the inside of Tom Edmunds, who's now back up to speed, but there's no change between the two of them. Håkon Grebstad in amongst the AMs as they all come roaring through turn number 4 and up towards 5. But looking a bit further back, Matt Edmunds right at the back right now with Stefan Gamble Grisbusen getting ahead. I think he's taking a very casual start here. He doesn't need to win this on lap number 1 as they all make their way through the corners here. But it looks like the AM field a bit more settled down compared to the other 2 fields as we can see all the drivers making their way through. We've got a driver off, that's Anthony Beck who's gone off circuit, I believe, and he's dropping all the way down the order. But meanwhile up front, after the open lap, it's Tom Dadswell leading ahead of Robert Desunic and Rhys Carroll. Rhys Carroll making a lot of ground early on compared to his peers as they make the way up into turn 1 for the second time asking. Jason Landry then in P4, but he's got Mark Fletcher going on the inside. Oh goodness me, and there's contact between the two of them now. Did Landry know that Fletcher was there? That will be the question that will be asked. But what that will mean is it's now Deegan Fairclough and ahead of what is Billy Fletcher and Luke McKeown. As we can see, Fletcher trying to go around the outside of Fairclough as they make the way up into the braking zone for turn 2. They come on through here. Is there going to be any change between the two? Rhys Carroll did a similar move on Robert Desunic just out of picture a moment ago. And as they make their way down towards turn number 3, no change this time. But you can see how Billy Fletcher really trying to capitalise here as they make their way rip-roaring down the hill and in towards that braking zone. Now, further back, I'm hearing there's been a number of changes to the position, and there's some drivers who've got it horrifically wrong as they come roaring on down. But meanwhile, Luke McKeown just ahead of Matt Caruana for the time being. These two staying firm and in formation for now. Neither one of them wants to get any advantage as Billy Fletcher looks at the move. He can't quite find it still. Meanwhile, in the Primes, we can see Håkon Schott already making the breakaway compared to Phil McDougall, who's just behind us. Mark Fletcher's between the two of them. Fletcher getting back up to speed after that contact with Jason Landry, of course, into turn 1 only moments ago. Further back, it's the case that Lucas Romano here in P3, and he's gained even more as Jeremy DeBover in P4 in the Primes here, ahead of Callum Reid-Garton. And Reid-Garton already up multiple places here, and we're not even 5 minutes into this race as he makes his way charging up towards turn number 8. And behind them, you've got Matthew Hodges there, the CXR Project Black driver, as we're hearing that Jason Landry has had to jump to the pits for an instant, which we'd love to bring you, of course, but we can't see the replays at this point in time, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, it's the case down in the AM class. Mortinis Oosthuis is now the leader of the AM class ahead of Gus Franken as they come through the final corner and down towards turn number 1 once again. And then we've got Håkon Grebstad who separates the two AM drivers with Gus Franken a bit further back, Mark Fletcher into the pits meanwhile. And there's Alexander Patak here down in what is P3 in the AM class and trying to gain ground as he's all over the back of Gus Franken. We ride on board here as he goes to the offensive, as we saw briefly in the picture there. That was Arjun Kregel going a bit wide out of turn 1, but Alexander Patak looking for a potential move here as they make their way into the braking zone. And well, is he going to be able to find? As we see up ahead, it's 3 wide almost there, and that is Håkon Grebstad trying to get a move around the outside of Kenny Hermans. And meanwhile, Alexander Patak gets the better exit out of the corner as they now make their way down. But you can see the acceleration that Ferrari versus the Audi just gives him the straight line speed he needs in order to be able to hold on as they make their way now down towards turn number 3 once again. They come down to the braking zone. You can see Hermans battling with Håkon Grebstad side by side, the 2 pro drivers here. They're down in P19, P20, but they're battling for this as if it matters all the way to the points lead. And as you can see, meanwhile, Gus Franken's had a major moment at turn number 3, and you can, well, it's a sad situation where he's able to turn that car around and he's lost a lot of places as a result with a mangled rear wing on that Ferrari. Now that's a disaster for the Dutchman as he gets himself back up to speed. And when I was saying about as if it matters, by the way, with regards to Kenny Hermans and Håkon Grebstad, well, the way they're both battling for this position right now, you think they're battling for the overall lead of this race, not for what is P19 overall or alternatively P10 in the Pro class, but they're going at it, and it's great to see, but they'll cost by other times. Hermans were very heavily wounded front end. Let's see it on the front right panel from the driver's perspective on that Lamborghini Huracan Evo as they make their way across that timeline once again onto lap number 3. They go charging up towards the turn number 1. Meanwhile, looking a bit further up the road, once again we can see that Robert Desschans battling with Reid-Garton. As you can see, Luke McKeown coming through here like a blister as they make their way through turn number 2 and down towards 3 they go. Now, how's this going to play out as they make their way down in towards the rain zone? You can see Reid-Garton here in a very prime opportunity. He started off this season very strong, particularly at road, and what was road Atlanta and also circuits prior to Sebring, if we remember correctly. But now, as he makes his way through turn 1, he is the leader of the Pro class at this point in time, and he will not want to let us go with the Britain as they make their way in towards what is turn number 5. They come on through, and as they do, he's holding on, and I think he's going to cause a little bit of a concertina effect between all the drivers as we ride on board the gearbox of our race leader overall and the Pro leader. And as they emerge from the corner around, you can just hear the roar of that V10 engine as they make their way up and around down towards turn number 8. He's got a V10 in the form of another Lamborghini chasing after him, and then they make their way into the braking zone, of course, and it's Robert Desschans back out here with Billy Fletcher behind in the Audi R8, also powered by the same V10 engine. It's the case that the Huracan and the R8 both feature an Audi V10 engine, but don't tell Lamborghini that. And as they make their way down towards turn number 1, it's the case that Robert Desschans pushing on right now. He's got the overspeed here. Can he make it work? Reid-Garton goes defensive. It's not going to be an opportunity for a move yet as they roll their way into the corner. Reid-Garton keeping firm right now, as behind you can see Luke McKeown and Matt Caruana also tucked in, and there's Deegan Fairclough in the back as well in P6, and he's trying to get into this fight, the privateer, as they make their way up towards turn number 2 once again. Now remember, in this situation, as you see Billy Fletcher looking for the move up the inside here, he's going to go for it this time. You can see McKeown trying to come through with him, and that is the advantage of being close to the driver ahead who goes for a move. You can try and force a double move here, but he can't quite find it. Instead, Billy Fletcher gets the job done, and now can he make the breakaway, or will he fall back? Battling with Robert Desschans, that is the big question as they come down to the braking zone. You can see McKeown going very late on the brakes. They're going almost into the back of Fletcher, but timing that to perfection. He's got the move done, and there's no wonder why McKeown is such a fast driver in this field. When he goes to moves like that and gets it nailed on, you love to see it. Meanwhile, Matt Caruana has also found his way past Robert Desschans, who's dropped like a stone with McKeown's late charge into that position in turn number 3. Now, as they make their way through 4, 5 and through 6 and 7, you can see it's the case that Robert Desschans all out of position and drops the place to Deegan Fairclough as well as they make their way on through. And meanwhile, Tom Edmunds in P7 now closed up. He's the second back on this battle for the top 6 as they make their way in towards turn number 8. Further down the order in the primes, meanwhile, let's not forget about the other classes that exist. We can see that Phil McDougall in P9, the 6, our Project Black driver. He is now leading, but behind him he has got literally the unstoppable force, it would seem, of Callum Reid-Garton, who is on the offensive once again. Hacken shot down in P3. The Bright Esports driver will be happy with this so far. It's going very nicely for him. Then we've got Jeremy DeBova in P4, followed by Lucas Arano in P5. That's in the pro-ams. As they make their way across the timeline once again here, we can see it's the case that Lucas Moen building up that speed as much as he possibly can. Meanwhile, in the AM class, it is the case that Morten Ustu is still leading, but he's only got an advantage of what is 7/10 of a second over Alexander Patak. You can see Patak going a bit defensive there versus Hermans. I'm not sure what he was wondering, whether it was the case he felt he needed to go defensive or whatnot. I think he was just trying to figure that one out indeed. And Hermans the same as they make their way out to turn 1. You can see DDD Belamik a little bit further back. You're looking at the Audi R8 driver in particular, who's at the head of the pack of 3 with George Bland tucked in behind him. And then you've got what is Arjan Kregel trying to get into the mix here as Kregel's on the inside. He's going to go for the double move here, Kregel, and surely not. He's going to get it nailed. And now that is a move and a half from the Dutchman. The Team Racing Netherlands driver literally coming from that far back and getting it stopped very nicely. A little tap on the rear from DDD Belamik, but there'll be no love lost between the two of them. And he's now back up to speed. You can see George Bland now trying to make his way past the prime driver here, and they are having some fun. Oh, these guys, they make their way through turn number 3, and you can see DDD Belamik really struggling with a wounded Audi there as they make their way through the corner. We're in that Hacken shot has had an instant off circuit that's dropped him further down the order from P3 in the pro-ams, but meanwhile as they make their way through turn number 5 and in towards 6, you see George Bland just trying to close up now to the back of Belamik to get that pass all said and done, but he can't quite find it at this point in time. As they make their way through 7 and head up towards 8. Behind them we've got Kurt van Hoenacker, the Belgian here, who is closing the ground down And the Change BE2 driver would love an opportunity to get some major points on the board for the team that really struggled at Le Mans and didn't get any points in the end, but he is trying to fight back as he makes his way through turn number 9 here and on to another lap. He goes on to lap number 6 very shortly, and meanwhile a bit further back we see Matthew Addy. Well, he was our winner in the AM class race because he wasn't starting right at the back, so he's not a championship leader in the AM class. That was Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen, but you can see Matthew Addy pressing on. He's up into P6 already and continuing this charge as he makes his way on through. P6 in what is the AM class, I should say. P28 overall. Oh, goodness, being behind. Is that Jean-Louis Desschans getting it very wrong? That was Jean-Louis Desschans who was bouncing there over the dip in the road at turn number 1. The P30 overall driver, the P12 Pro-Am as it currently stands, and he's trying to make his way upwards and onwards right now. As you can see, Matt Evans here, our P2 driver in the AM Championship. P31 overall goes very heavy on the brakes very early, and Navarro de Bova tries to sneak around the outside. There's contact between the two of them, and Navarro de Bova there with a very daring move around the outside. You do not normally see a driver try to hug that close around the outside into turn 2. It's possible, but it's very difficult to do in these GT3 machines, and Navarro de Bova is showing his intentions clear. He may not be in the top 10 in the AM Championship, but he's not afraid to battle with one of our championship contenders as they make their way around through 4 and up into 5. 10 minutes of this race complete, and it has been all arms and all elbows out as they continue to race around the Red Bull Ring circuit, and still plenty of time to go as we have had a couple of retirements. We have had the retirement of what is James Slates and also Jason Landry early on in this race. We've gone from 38 drives to 36, but still plenty more racing action to come, I can assure you, with the time that is remaining. There's plenty of time still to go, and speaking of time, well, right now Reese Carroll, he has got that lead, but you can see who's managed to get past Billy Fletcher. It is Luke McKeown as Matt Caruana comes on past Fletcher as well. I think Fletcher at this point might be playing the long game here. I think he may be planning to fuel safe behind Caruana, McKeown and Carroll, because he's not pushing on. You can see there, look how close he is to the back of what is Caruana's car, literally pushing it on. And as they make their way through turn number 3, it is the case that Caruana, the Volante Racing driver here, just building up as much speed as possible and trying to go hunting after McKeown. He will not want to let it go. As meanwhile we can see, oh goodness me, and what on earth has happened here to Deegan Fairclough as they make their way out of turn number 3. I think he's gone for a spin now. I'm not sure if there was contact, but it is the case that right now it's not gone well for the privateer as he makes his way into turn number 5. We can see that Callum Reid-Garton has found his way on through, and meanwhile further up the road we've got Austrian Hereford, who's now up into P6. I think Dadswell has had to jump to the pits. I'm not sure if there was contact between Deegan Fairclough and Tom Dadswell, but Dadswell has jumped to the pits. He's now down the lap, and Austrian Hereford has benefited as a result as the Norwegian driver continues to sail on here in P6. But we look to the leaders here. Reese Carroll has been passed for a lead. It happened only moments ago into turn number 8, and as they make their way onto another lap here, can McKeown now make the breakaway in P1, or will it be the case that Reese Carroll comes back at him? They've got a long stretch of road here, and Reese Carroll, if he nails the exit of turn 1, he may have an opportunity, but he's got a long way as he builds his way up the hill. And you can see me on Billy Fletcher just watching on that P4 position at the back of this pack of 4, and a bit further back we've got Robert Sunik who's trying to close up as they make their way into the braking zone once more. No change here, and I do wonder if we're starting to see the slipstream train form, because Billy Fletcher's just sitting there watching, as meanwhile looking a bit further down, it's the case that Callum Reid-Garton has found his way past Phil McDougall, and as a result is now up into P7 overall. That's the lead of the Pro-Am class, and is continuing to push on. But to be fair to Phil McDougall, he's not too far back, and the CXR Project Black driver will know if he can keep this gap relatively tight. Any mistake that happens, or any overstop by being too long in the pits for an unnecessary reason, could see him re-inherit the lead and take this one to the finish line as they make their way through the corner. You saw there Callum Reid-Garton just kicking up a little bit of dust coming out of turn number 3, just going a little bit deep there, and those are the mistakes which could prove fatal later on, with tyre wear being such consideration. The biggest thing at this circuit is brake wear. The brakes will wear very quickly on these cars over the course of that. Of course, they're carbon ceramic brakes, they have got a long life to them, but it's a case of managing those brake temperatures because of the number of heavy braking zones, and if those brake temperatures get too high, that brake effect will lead to brake fade, and as a result the brakes will not be as strong, and that's where our drivers could be seen going too deep into corners, and they'll need to react accordingly, or they'll just simply understeer beyond the apex, as we see meanwhile in the battle for the AM class lead here, where it's 2 teammates battling. It's the 2 Danes of Morten Ustus and Alexander Batak, and you can see Batak here, the Switchback Motorsports driver, alongside his teammate here, both of them running in formation. I think right now they'll be thinking to themselves, this is going really well, don't do anything silly, and I'm sure the team principal will be on the radio right now saying, keep it together guys, no need to push one another too hard, just drive this one smart, fight later on in the race. We'll give you the permission to do so later on as they make their way on to another lap. And do keep in mind that both of these drivers are looking to get some major points in the AM Championship right now, as they are falling by the wayside compared to the top 4 battle as they make their way up towards turn number 2. Once again, it's really Alexander Pataka would love to get the maximum points all from this race to get himself right back up into those standings. But meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Matt Caruana has found his way past Reese Carroll as they make their way through turn number 5 once again. And it does look as though McKeown is up in the intensity of the pace at the front of this field. He is trying to make the breakaway right now versus what is the chasing pack. And as a result, I think Matt Caruana has made that pass and is now going to try and drop Reese Carroll and Billy Fletcher as well. And the question will be, will Billy Fletcher try and force a pass, or will he be patient and wait for an opportunity, or will he just sit there and fuel save? That's going to be the big consideration on his mind as they make their way into turn number 9. We'll have to wait and see. But looking from them to further down the order, I can tell you that at this point in time, as you see there, hold up a second, it's the case that Matt Caruana weaves to the inside just to move out and look away, weaves the inside and then pulls back onto the race line. He's trying to break the toe. Matt Caruana wants to break away. He does not want Reese Carroll or Billy Fletcher behind him anymore. He's trying to make that break, and you can see Billy Fletcher sandwiched in behind what is Reese Carroll's rear end as they make their way out of 1 up towards 2, and it's going to be Fletcher who's going to try and go round the outside here. Reese Carroll defends. Now, is this to let Fletcher through? No, definitely not. In fact, you can see Fletcher's broken early to try and get the cutback and not lose too much time. He's gone for it here. Reese Carroll just about now is getting back on the accelerator and holding on to the position for the time being as they come rip-roaring down towards turn number 3 once again. Now, Fletcher all over the back of Reese Carroll like he was with Caruana moments ago, and as they make their way down to the braking zone, no change between these two at this point in time. But Fletcher, I think, now feeling he's being held up and he needs to get the pass. Of course, Reese Carroll's allowed to battle. They're battling within class here. There's nothing to say they can't battle. But I think in Fletcher's mind, he wants to get that position done. As meanwhile, I'm hearing that Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen's had a spin at turn number 1, and that's a disaster for the AM Championship leader, who's dropped all the way down to P31 overall. That is effective P32 now, because Franken coming on through, and Franken making the move on the run up towards turn number 2 there, with Gamble-Rasmussen trying to build his speed back up. But for Gamble-Rasmussen, that is a disaster because it drops him all the way down to P10 in class, and means that right now his main rival in the championship, Matt Edmunds, who is P8 in class, P30 overall, and there was only a point separating the two of them, he will then look to get back ahead come the end of tonight and finish as they stand as they were. But of course, there's still a lot more race. We're only a quarter of the way into this race as they make their way on through once again, and we are seeing that Matthew Hodges, as I look out my commentary box window and the cameraman's pointing to the camera, Matthew Hodges into the pits early. Now the strategy, this is going to be important, because Hodges going early may look like the right thing to do, but remember how strong Slipstream is here, ladies and gentlemen. He will want to come out in a pack of cars where he can use the toe on the straights not to lose any time, because I think we are going to see drivers peel into the pits in packs. They will not want to lose the Slipstream train. If they do, it could cost them up to half a second a lap, depending on how they utilise it. But Hodges has pulled the trigger early, and Jean-Louis Desschans as well is also into the pits. Jean-Louis Desschans is in, and he's down to P30 overall. That's Pro-Am P12, as he's now having his pit stop here. And meanwhile, a little bit further up the road, we see Kurt Van Hoornacker in a very uncomfortable situation where he's got Anthony Beck on his outside. He's got Matthew Addy, his peer in class, trying to look for the mover, and Addy's going to try and look to go for the comeback here as Van Hoornacker lets Beck to have that outside line. He's defending versus Addy, but he wants to keep Beck between himself and Addy as well. He doesn't want Addy gaining any more ground, as these two are in a bit of a championship sparring match as they make their way down. And meanwhile, Anthony Beck, who is of course our driver in what is the Pro-Am class, he just does not want to be in this battle at all. He just wants to get clear of it. The Ignium Motorsport driver has got another thing coming if he thinks he's going to get an easy ride, says Kurt Van Hoornacker, as they make their way through 4 and up into 5. I think Beck's now got the inside line here, and as they make their way into the corner, I think Beck has got it done. This is a bit of a kick up the smoke. We're hearing that Deegan Fairclough has gone into the pits, and that is a disaster. He's jumped to the pits, so he's gone a lap down. That's why we saw a time screens update with everybody gaining a position, and that is very unfortunate. I say everybody, the majority of our drivers, well, the drivers behind him on track, gaining a position over him as he's had to jump to the pit, and I think that is for damage to the car. As we can see here, Anthony Beck trying to make that charge and trying now to go after DDD Belaming in the battle for what is effectively P22 overall at P9 in the Pro-Am class. As they make their way on to another lap very shortly, they go on to lap number 12. It is the case that right now Matthew Addy just soldiering on behind where's Kurt Van Hoenacker here, and behind them Navarro de Bova, who we saw battling with Matt Evans earlier on, and he is ahead of Matt Evans right now and is continuing to push on. Oh, good spin. I think we've had an incident. Matt Caruana has had a spin at turn number 3, and Caruana, one of our major championship contenders, and indeed our championship leader in the pro class going into tonight. That's a disaster for Lante Racing driver. He hasn't lost too many positions, and it looks like he hasn't made any contact with a wall. It's just a case that he's got it wrong coming out of turn number 3 and spun the car, but it's now Matt Caruana who's got it all to do once again. But speaking of a driver who will be noticing that and will now have it all to do to get past the guy ahead of him, it's Billy Fletcher, who if he can finish ahead of Matt Caruana will close the delta to Caruana as things currently stand. Remember, the points are distributed across both races here, but Billy Fletcher will now know he needs to get a move on because he's only going to get one opportunity to be ahead of Caruana before Caruana starts to close back up on circuit. Caruana will literally hunt things down as rapidly as possible. He will only spur him on to push even harder, and Fletcher right now, if he's playing the fuel saving game, then he'll be looking at a long-term investment right now behind Reese Cow. As you can see, Robert Asunik has dropped out of the picture entirely and is a bit further back in P4 as things currently stand, albeit putting in a solid performance all the same as he makes his way up the hill. Meanwhile, a bit further down the road, a driver who had an incident earlier on, he went for a spin out of the circuit. We can see here that's Håkon Grebstad, who is the Swede chasing after what is Ben Hicks. As they make their way up the hill, we ride on board here with the BMW M4 driver as they come roaring up the hill, and the Swede trying to look for the move here on the inside versus Ben Hicks, the Ferrari driver not defending, I think comfortable in knowing that BMW too far back to go. Ooh, but Hicks gets it wrong there, gets it very squirrely on the rear end, and Hicks having to literally straight line the car off the course there, because if he hadn't, I think the rear end was going to come around. You could see how the rear left tyre just simply lost adhesion to the tarmac and wanted to let go, and Hicks there reacting very quickly to a car that was going to give up on him as he now returns to race pace. But that's given Jot an opportunity to get in position as Jeremy De Bova spins there on the exit of turn number 3, and that's going to drop him all the way down after what's looking very good for the Belgian, and he's just parked up right now looking to try and get back on the circuit, but you can see all the drivers coming on through as everybody comes through on through, and he's going to try and get back up to speed before Anthony Beck and George Blanc come through. He won't want to fall backwards into this as Austrian Hereford's into the pits, and you can see Jeremy De Bova, he drives made the way through, and that's George Blanc in P18 overall, P3 in the AM class, fending off Kurt Van Hoenacker and Matthew Addy, and this AM class battle is not going away. It is building up to a crescendo, and I think it's going to be the case. It's just as much settled on the strategy as it is on the circuit as they make their way on through turn number 7 up towards 8, and Matthew Addy already looking for the move here versus Van Hoenacker, who signals defence and offence at the same time here. And you hate to be in Van Hoenacker's position because he's right between two drivers who want to battle with him. Addy wants to get past him, Blanc wants to defend against him, and it's the case Van Hoenacker has to pick both options at the same time as they make their way down across that timeline. It's Addy on the inside, Van Hoenacker on the outside here. Ferrari versus Audi as they go into one. I think Addy's got the move, but he's got to be careful as he makes one exit, because this is where Van Hoenacker can now come back at him as they make their way down. We look to the blimp camera here as you can see them all making their way up towards turn number 2, and it's the case Van Hoenacker just does not have the speed in that Audi R8 versus the Ferrari power as they make their way up into the braking zone. But you can just see how wide the run is into turn 2 from the blink camera. It gives you a sense of perspective, and as they make their way out of the corner now and return to more trackside, it is the case that Van Hoenacker just has to wait for the opportunity to try and get on through as they make their way down towards turn number 3, and Addy's looking for the move on the inside this time versus George Blanc. Late on the brakes here, you can see he's had to stop the car on Apex, and it's drifted a little bit wide. It's understood wide of Apex. I think George Blanc, to be fair, was trying to go for a cutback. He was trying to go deep to cut in on a late apex, but he missed the late apex, and as a result wasn't able to come back as much as he would like. And as they come roaring out to 5 and down towards 6, it is the case that right now Matthew Addy pressing on. He's gained 2 more places, and he's pushing on once again after this lap. His next target is Alexander Batak, who's much further up the road. Alexander Batak being the best part of what is 10 seconds up the road from Matthew Addy, and there are 2 drivers between Addy and his target, and that's Anthony Beck and Austrian Hereford, the Prime and Pro drivers respectively, racing their own races, of course. As we can see here, Matthew Addy coming to the end of what for him is lap number 15. going on to lap number 16 now as they go across that timeline. As we look from them to a bit further down the road, you can see Lucas Romano here battling with Matthew Hodges and Phil McDougall. Now it looks as though, I think Matthew Hodges has had a slowdown there because he's going very slowly into turn number 1. As a result, Lucas Romano, the prime driver, getting past his prime peer, and you can see that Phil McDougall on the offensive, as we can see the CXR Project Black driver now in all of his splendid colours of the CXR Project Black machine. We've got that fixed. It is the case as they charge up towards turn number 2. He will be looking to try and get into this fight. He wants to try and help his teammate to get past as well. He'll probably try and set up a move which causes a space for 2 to come on through rather than just the 1, and turn 2 is the best place to do that. We've seen multiple double overtakes into turn number 2. Will he be able to do it as well? That's the big question. We'll have to wait and see. And some pit stops also going. Arjan Kregel, who had an off earlier on, has come into the pits and completed what we believe will be his one and only stop with some repair work to the car. We are in that pit window, of course. We have completed over 20 minutes of the race. We're almost 25 minutes in now, and we will become the end of the lap for the likes of Phil McDougall and Lucas Romano here, as they're making their way around the second half of the lap right now. But it is the case that as they make the way towards the end of this lap, that strategy is now going to look ever more important, and they'll need to think about when do they deploy the strategic aspect, when do they look to make that pit stop, and where does it bring them out. With the one driver, of course, who's already made a pit stop. In fact, it is the case that looking at our pit counts here, all 3 of these drivers have already made pit stops. We're not going to be seeing any more pit stops than them. And Ben Hicks as well has come into the pit. So it's these 4 have all pitted, and now we're racing to the end, we would expect. So my apologies there, ladies and gentlemen. So the strategic aspect has already played out, and now they're all racing. But it's the case of George Bland in from what was a P5 in P5 in the AM class, and well, now as he makes his way through the pit lane, we'll have to wonder how the AM class is going to play on out, with our highest placed AM class pit stopper being what at the moment it will be George Bland as things currently stand, or Kurt Van Hoenacker. And it's back, where is Van Hoenacker versus George Bland? That is the big question as they make the way through turn number 8 and into 9. You can see Van Hoenacker going a bit wide out the final corner, but he's managed to nail the exit eventually. And as he makes his way on out here, it's the case that George Bland still in the pits. They're up on the jacks. Bland's doing work on the tyres. He's changing tyres, this Bland. This is costing him massively as Van Hoenacker has cleared him considerably now. Now it will mean that later in the race, George Bland will have much fresher tyres on those fronts in particular. But I think that's a wrong call from Bland compared to the rate which was in. Of course, he will tell us whether it is the case it was right to come on in. Speaking of coming on in, one of our leaders, Håkon Grebstad, has come into the pit, and the Ignu Motorsport driver here, I think, has made the play, and he's now going to see where the cards lie come the end of it. As meanwhile, our leaders of this race, Luke McKeown, is now 4.2 seconds clear of Rees Cow, and just simply drifting off into the distance. But looking further back, you can see Rees Cow here still holding off Billy Fletcher, but then look in the back of the camera shot. He's making his way out of turn 2 right now. He's coming down the hill. It is Matt Caruana. Remember, he had the spin at turn 3. It hasn't phased him. It's only motivated him more. And Matt Caruana right now is one of the fastest drivers on circuit. He's only being picked in terms of pace within his own class by Luke McKeown. Otherwise, he is the fastest pro driver out there, and he's actually being matched by Callum Reid-Garton, the prime driver, our prime leader, who is ahead of him right now as they make the way on through. But meanwhile, I'm hearing that George Bland has had a oh goodness me, George Bland, who's only just had a pit stop and a long pit stop of that to change the front tyres. Bland has had a spin at turn 3 on cold tyres, and now he will lose out even more. He'll be kicking himself for that one, no doubt, as he now gets back up to speed. And what was looking to be a strategic gamble now seems to be a bit of strategic folly with that one mistake as he makes his way back up to speed. That is a disaster for George Bland. And how can he recover from this? Well, that is the big question, and we'll have to wait to see if he's able to get himself back up the order anytime soon. As meanwhile, we look a bit further up the road, and I can tell you that right now, Lucas Romano, he's leading this prime train here in the battle for what is currently P6 in the prime class, but we reckon it's more likely into the top 5, if not towards the bottom step of the podium, P3. It's the case that Lucas Romano holding on to that position versus Phil McDougall and Matthew Hodges. The 2 CXR Project Black drivers have come up behind him, and they are not finding a way past any time soon. And just ahead of him, you do have the likes of Matt Edmunds here, the AM driver, who is chasing after Alexander Patak, and all over the back of Patak as Patak peels into the pits, and as a result, Matt Edmunds is released now and gains another position here. But remember that the BMW driver has to make a pit stop at some point, but he's now got to try and make this extension of his stint count compared to his opponent and try to overcut Alexander Patak. Will it work out? That's the question. we will have to wait and see. But I think Edmunds will be cognizant of the fact that he's got 3 prime drivers who are trying to come on through. When I say he's got 3 prime drivers, we've got Matthew Hodges into the pits for a second time. I think that's for a drive-through penalty. That looks like a drive-through because he's come through very, very quickly. He's literally come on in and come out, and I think Hodges there with what was a penalty. Although I'm not seeing anything on my screen right now to say it was a penalty, but that does seem to be what has happened to Matthew Hodges, as meanwhile Phil McDougall pressing on here, going hunting. Meanwhile up front, well, he has just set the fastest lap of the race at 29.037, and it's Luke McKeown here who's got himself sandwiched between 2 like-for-like Audis, albeit these 2 Audis of course in different classes. They're both in the AM classes, Alexander Patak and Van Hoenacker. And speaking of Patak versus Van Hoenacker, this is quite critical. Both of these drivers have pitted, and you can see Alexander Patak has actually come out behind Van Hoenacker after the pit stop, and that's a disaster for Patak, who was running very comfortably towards the front of what was the AM class, or at least running it well up there, and now he's come out there, and Gamble Rasmussen as well, having pitted, well, he's come out a bit further back. This is not good reading for these guys as they make their way back up to speed, given the fact they've come out so far back, albeit it's now a case that they've got to see over the remaining half an hour whether they can gain even more and get themselves back up the field. We've still got a number of pit stops to go, but it's not good reading, it would seem, for the Switchback Motorsport drivers right now, who have lost out considerably in the pit window as they make their way on through turn number 6. As they make their way on through the corners right now, as Alexander Patak here will literally go on the offensive as soon as possible, and he'll also look to hunt down Navarro de Bova who's up ahead. And remember, we've had a good number of pit stops already play out. I think right now Alexander Patak will need to remember he's got to nurse those tyres all the way to the finish, because I do not recall him putting on a fresh set of tyres. But wait and see as he goes a bit wide there out the final corner. He's got to be careful of track limits coming out of the final corner. Meanwhile, further back in the picture, and still as they were, as they're almost now a lap ahead of the pack, ahead of them, it is the case that Rees-Cowan still ahead of Billy Fletcher. Excuse me, but no difference between the two of them in terms of their overall pace, and I think Billy Fletcher is tying himself to the pace of the Drive Dead Racing driver ahead. I do not think he has enough pace in his opinion to break away after overtaking. So what he's doing is he's tying himself to Rees-Cowan, who, to be fair, we should not discredit. He's putting in a stellar job, and their pace is very good right now, the pair of them. They're lapping in the mid to high 29s compared to our leader, who is lapping in the low 29s. It's the case that these two, I think, are working a little bit of harmony to try and save some fuel in the car and keep it going to the best of their possible capabilities. But we'll have to wait and see how it plays out between the two of them later on in this race. Right now, they continue to push on here with half the race still remaining. Meanwhile, Callum Reid-Garton, our leader in the Prime class, a leader by a margin of what is 13 seconds. He's behind Matt Caruana right now, and then you've got Daniel Holmer, who is our second place man in the Prime class, P7 overall, just continuing on his Crusaders, the Swede, the Bright Esports driver, as he makes his way down towards turn number 3. And as he comes on down into the braking zone, you can see it's the case that Daniel Holmer just simply continuing that momentum and keeping it together for now, as behind him Hackenschott also trying to close up, albeit the Bright Esports driver there, he will not want to get too aggressive with his teammate. The Bright Esports team, in fact, on course for one of their season best performances right now, if not their season best in the Prime class, and this is very impressive to see from the two Swedes as they're making their way through. But they do have to take their pit stops, so we'll wait to see how they filter in to the rest of the field later on. It's not all over yet, but I can tell you that right now it's the case that we can see Kurt Van Hoenacker going around the outside of Navarro de Bova there, and Alexander Patak doing the same. Now, I do think that Navarro de Bova may have lifted off there for his challenged teammate. It looks as though he was in a bit of a compromised line. I think he peeled to the inside, but I do not think they expected the Switchback Motorsports driver Alexander Patak to come through. And you can see how Patak literally is on the attack, not stop here. He does not want to let Kurt Van Hoenacker break away with this. He can't afford to at this point in the race, because if Van Hoenacker makes the breakaway here, he's only going to drop further down as they make their way into the braking zone for turn number 3. And you can see it's the case Navarro de Bova having to give the space to Rees-Cowan as Navarro goes wide out the corner to let our leaders come on through. The blue flag's waving, and the Patak will have to do the same soon. But you can see how close he's trying to get. What he's trying to do here, he's trying to get into a situation whereby if he's got to give way on the blue flags, then Van Hoenacker has to do the same. He does not want to lose anything to the driver in front of him right now, and he's pushing on relentlessly. He'll be stripping life out of those tyres, there's no doubt about that. But as they make the way down towards turn number 8 right now, can you forgive it? Oh, sorry, can you expect nothing less from Alexander Patak in the fact that really he's got to push as hard as possible as he chases after Van Hoornacker. And as they make the way through turn at number 9, once again you can see now how Reid-Garton and Billy Fletcher are so close here, and those blue flags are going to be waving in earnest, and Patak will most likely be given the call now. He's got to let the pros come through as they are a lap up. You see Billy Fletcher not able to get on through there, and that will be frustrating for Billy Fletcher. He'll want his fuel saving partner Reid-Garton, and you can see immediately there Patak moving out of the way. And now I think what Patak's noticing, there's an opportunity here to close up massively under braking into 2 versus what is Van Hoornacker when the pros make the way on through. And you can see Reid-Garton already going on the offensive here to clear the driver who's a lap down, and Billy Fletcher trying to do the same, not close enough to do so however. And so it means we've now got a back and forth where we've got essentially one of our pros on the lead lap, then an AM on a lap down, then a pro in between the other AM driver and his target as they make the way in towards the braking zone for turn 3. But Fletcher will now clear Van Hoornacker. And where is Alexander Patak? Well, he's not close enough to capitalise on this situation, and they stay as they were. But meanwhile, looking from them to further down, we can see that Lucas Romano here as he makes his way out to turn at number 7. He's got Jean-Louis Desschans ahead of him right now, and in fact I think Lucas Romano has had an off. Alternatively, he's been into the pits. We're just trying to check where it's the case. He's had a major off for circuit. He's lost himself 12 seconds because he's dropped behind Jean-Louis Desschans here, and Jean-Louis Desschans has already pitted of course, and as a result Lucas Romano has fallen out of the hunt for a higher position, and Phil McDougall is now the leader of that pack that we saw earlier. We're looking at the CXR Project Black driver right now. Matthew Hodges hasn't fallen quite far back given he had that drive-through penalty by the looks of things, as Luke McKeown now raises the fastest lap to 1:28.950. He's pretty much in qualifying laps at this point in time as they make the way on through. And I think McKeown will be due a pit stop very soon, given the fact that he's putting such blistering laps in as we see our drivers making their way around the circuit. As they do so, Phil McDougall pressing on here as he makes his way into turn number 5 once again. And well, he's going to be hunting down Anthony Beck, who is the best part of what is, well, as we look at our timing screen there, he is the best part of what is 12 seconds up the road, and Beck just pushing on. He is due a pit stop. Beck, he's not coming in just yet. He's staying out and going for the long haul, as meanwhile Dirt Bounce to do the same, as has Hackenshot, also Daniel Holmer. These guys in P3 and P2 respectively, Daniel Holmer P2 and then Callum Reid-Garton, who is in a bit of a world of his own right now in that P5 overall position and P1 in prime classes. He's on the back of Matt Caruana here and just staying firmly behind him. Meanwhile, in the AM class, I can tell you to give you a quick recap of what our top 3 is. We can see Morten Ustos here. He's got Øystein Herford over the back of him. And it's the case that Ustos has yet to pit, but the Switchback Motorsport driver here, who did have what was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Alexander Patak behind him, who pitted much earlier and has come out a long way down. It's a case that there's 14 places between the two of them. Ustos right now yet to pit, but he's just trying to make this stint go as long as possible here. He's going for the overcut versus the rest of the Anfield. Now, in terms of making the overcut work, what he doesn't want to do, he doesn't want to get into these little nip and tuck moments with drivers in other classes. You could see that he had to come slightly off the optimal line through turn 3 in order to accommodate what was Øystein Herford coming through, and that's what you don't want to do. You want to be tucked in very tight to the drivers in the other classes they come past you. You want to capitalise on their time, do a bit of fuel saving behind them, and that's what Ustos is now doing, because the longer he stays out and the more he gains by being behind what we would call quote-unquote the faster class drivers, albeit that's not necessarily always true, as you've seen in both this lobby and the Coach Dave Academy Next Level Racing lobby. That's where he gains the time. Ustos into the pit stop. This is critical, this pit stop, because if he nails this, we could see him come out firmly in the battle for the podium. Where's Matthew Addy? Matthew Addy goes on for another lap, so Addy's deciding to go even longer in the SVPMR Ferrari, and then we've got Matt Edmunds who's also going along as he makes his way on through. So we will see. Where's Jürgen Nocker? Oh, gonna be a Nocker's got it wrong, coming out to turn at number 6 into 7, and he was the driver who was on course to potentially, we thought, re-inherit the podium positions, if not a chance at the lead, and by getting it wrong, coming out to turn number 6 into 7, Knocker's race is now taking a turn for the worst as he gets himself back up to speed. Ustos, meanwhile, is now coming out of the pit lane, and that means the danger man is out of the way. Ustos, I think, at this point could be on course for a potential win here if he nails this outlap and then just gets himself back up to a comfortable speed. Presuming that Edmunds and Addy have long stops, in terms of long stops, I mean the same length, if not longer than Usta's. This is Usta's race to lose because he is putting in an absolutely colossal performance here. Yes, he started towards the front of the Anfield to a degree, but still, you've got to bring it home. And right now, if he brings it home, the Dane is going to be having a great day. As meanwhile, his teammate Alexander Batak, well, he'll take joy in seeing that Kurt Van Horenacker has had a major moment. You can see that Batak has got past, but he's got Van Horenacker right behind him. And this is not what you want as he makes his way into the break-ins over turn number 2. And he comes on through, goes very deep in the zone. He carried a lot of speed in there. I think the brakes may have locked up there, a bit too much temperature in those front brakes. As he emerges on the corner, you can see Van Horenacker here trying to go for the move, but the Dane not giving the Belgian any slipstream as they make their way down to the braking zone. He's saying to the Belgian, well, you know what, if you want it, you're going to have to go around the outside. I think Van Horenacker said, don't mind if I do, thank you very much, as they make their way out of turn number 3. And that's Navarro de Bova who gives the pursuit in P5 right now in the AM class. That's P25 overall, chased after P24 and P23 overall as they make their way through turn number 5 once again. But this is building up massively right now in the AM class for the final step of the podium, as we do have to wonder where Matt Evans and Matthew Addy will come out when those pit stops are complete. Meanwhile, I can tell you that in the Pro-Am class, our top 3 have yet to pit. In fact, our top 4 have yet to pit. But other than that, it's the case all of our Pro-Ams have pitted. And Phil McDougall right now is our lead Pro-Am driver who has pitted. And that is P14 overall for the Pro-Am driver as he makes his way past Matt Evans, who has to give him the space there as Bill McDougall came down the inside. But you can see Evans battling back with him as they make their way down to 3. I think he's trying to get a message onto the CXR Project Black driver. Okay, I've given you the space now. Get a move on and pull me along with you as they make their way out to 3 and down towards 4 and 5. And as they come right on through here, we're hearing that Callum Reid-Garton's into the pits. So I look out my commentary box window, I can see Callum Reid-Garton making his way into the pit box right now, and I think he will be relatively safe in terms of that pit stop as he's not in the pits, my apologies, my eyesight's completely deceiving me. That's Robert de Sunic into the pits as they make the way on through. It's the case Callum Reid-Garton and Holmer staying out and Hacken shot as well. Robert de Sunic then, how can I confuse the two of them? I can only say that is a terrible eyesight on my behalf as we can see Phil McDougall pressing on him. Matthew Addy into the pits now. Will we see Matt Evans come in? Matt Evans as well. So it's the case that the 2 lead AM drivers who have yet to pit are now in. Where's Ustahus? I hear you ask. Here he is, coming out of 7 and heading up towards turn number 8. Now the Dane pressing on from Switchback Motorsports here. This is critical. If he comes out ahead, the gap could be the deciding factor because we know Addy and Evans have been lapping fast. They've been lapping considerably fast. They've been lapping almost half a second faster for the last few laps. But as Ustahus comes across that timeline, he takes the AM lead back under his control. But where are Addy and Evans? I hear you ask. Well, here they are in the pits as Ustahus makes his way on through. Addy has just left his pit box. We see him coming out the pits. We see Evans coming out the pits as well. He's closed up a little bit through the pit window. They've had very similar pit times. And as they both make their way on out of the pit lane right now, it is the case, where is Kurt Van Horenacker? Is it the case that that mistake has cost him dearly? It's cost him massively. There is Kurt Van Horenacker, who should have been in the battle for the lead. He's down in P4 in the AM class. He's down in P23. And it means that right now, it is a three-way fight for the lead. Morten Ustahus, who is the best part of what is, we reckon, in the region of about 9 seconds ahead of Matthew Addy, who is here. You can see him making his way down towards turn number 3, but then just behind him is Matt Evans, who is only a further, 4 seconds back, and these 3 are going to come together over the course of the race. But not to count just on them, but also on the Pro-Am class right now, we can tell you that our top 3 in the Pro-Am class have yet to pit. In fact, our top 4 are still yet to pit, and the Phil McDougall, is in P5, P13 overall, and as a result he's soldiering on here. And will this be a bit of strategic mastery from the CXR Project Black driver? Can he bring himself onto that podium by simply going for that undercut, that early undercut versus the top 4? We'll have to wait and see. As you see Matthew Hodges coming across the timing line right now in P14 and what is effectively P6 of the Pro-Am class. He makes his way on through. Meanwhile, in the battle for the lead of this race, the overall lead and indeed the podium of the Pro class, we can tell you that Luke McKeown into the pits on the lead, Reese Carroll into the pits from P2, Billy Fletcher stays out, he goes one more lap. The fuel saving I think has worked. It's given him the right to go longer as we've still got we've got 18 minutes and the final lap of this race still to go. Matt Caruana is also into the pits now for Billy Fletcher. This lap is critical because he needs to either get out ahead of Rees-Carroll or get so close to the back of him when coming out that Caruana's not there to capitalise. McKeown's already coming out of the pit. We're also hearing that Callum Reid-Garton has stayed out. Meanwhile, Daniel Holmer and also Håkon Grebstad, both of the Bright Esports drivers are in. They're going to be doing a double stop on Bright Esports as they bring both drivers in here. Unfortunately, they've got separate pit garages for the two drivers and separate pit crews, but they both come on in here. Where are they going to come out as Dirtbout stays out for another lap as the Ferrari driver? He soldiers on. Meanwhile, we have Phil McDougall making his way right now down through turn number 8. Now, will this have worked for the CXR Project Black driver? This is the big test as Daniel Holmer's already left his pit box. A little bit of wheel spin on exit. Where's Phil McDougall? I hear you ask. Well, he's coming out of the final corner. He's across that timing line. Where's Daniel Holmer? He's making his way up the pit exit. He's building himself up to speed. This is going to be very close. It's going to be Nip and Tutton. There they both are in the camera shot as they come out of turn number 1. It's side by side. Daniel Holmer on the inside. Phil McDougall on the outside. This is the battle for what we believe is P2 in the prime class as they make the way up the hill in towards turn number 2. It's Holmer still on the inside, but McDougall's got his nose ahead. Under brake and they go. Holmer was never going to give that up. He was always going to go late on the brakes there and make McDougall make his way around the outside to inside. And as they make the way out, you could see it is the case that Daniel Holmer is ahead. Meanwhile, Håkon Grebstad, who came in behind, is a little bit further back. But we look back to Holmer versus McDougall. McDougall on the inside. He goes straight to turn 3. They give each other the space, and Holmer, as we see George Bland going a little bit on the rally trip as they make the way on through, and it's the case that Holmer still there as they make the way to 5. It's brilliant side-by-side racing between the two of them as they come on through, and as they make the way out of turn number 5 down towards 6, they are still side-by-side as they come into the left-hander. Billy Fletcher's been into the pits. He's come out ahead of Rees-Carroll from what we're hearing. Mark Fletcher's up to P4. Matt Caruana's down in P6, but we focus here and now on what's happening as Callum Reid-Garton is exiting the pits right now and Dirt bounces in. Now surely both of these drivers are going to be coming out ahead of Dirt Bounce unless Bounce falls an absolute blinder in the pits. And as they make the way on through turn number 9, it is the case that Daniel Holmer is still ahead of McDougall in a brilliant side-by-side battle between these two drivers. You couldn't fault them. Dirt Bounce right now, he's parked up. Where's Håkon Grebstad? Håkon's making his way across that timeline as Dirt Bounce completes his pit stop and leaves very quickly. It is the case that Shot will move up into P4 in the prime class. That's P12 overall, and they make the way up the hill once again. But meanwhile, we look a little bit further up here and you can see McDougall has dropped back. He's dropped back to a second off of Daniel Holmer right now. I think he's saving it for a little bit later on. We've still got 15 minutes of this race to go. We've still got plenty more racing to go. And to give you an update on what has happened, just hold up a second. Good to see Matt Caruana at the same corner as where he got it wrong earlier in this race. He's had another major moment. He gets himself back up to speed, but Caruana with 2 mistakes, and it's very rare to see Caruana make a mistake, or let alone the same mistake twice. But Caruana, our championship leader in the pro class, has now fallen victim to turn number 3 again, and he's dropped down to P7 in class, P8 overall, and that is a disaster for the pro driver. Now, Mark Fletcher, to be fair, is into the pits here, so it may not be as many places lost, but Mark Fletcher still will see this as an opportunity to potentially go into a battle with Caruana and get another place when he gets the update from his pit crew to say, his crew chief I should say, so that Matt Caruana's had a spin. Now meanwhile up front I can tell you that McKeown is still leading after the pits by 7.5 seconds over Billy Fletcher, who came out ahead of Rees-Carroll and came out by a sizable margin of 5 seconds. We see Rees-Carroll here, and he in turn has got a nice advantage over Austrian Hereford of 12-13 seconds, as meanwhile Mark Fletcher in the pits right now. Well, Matt Caruana has come well out ahead of Mark Fletcher when all is said and done. But Caruana will now be chasing down Håkon Grebstad, and we know that these two, whenever they are near one another on circuit, sparks always fly between the Volante Racing driver of what is Matt Caruana and the Alien Motorsport McLaren of what is Håkon Grebstad as they make the way down towards turn number 3 once again. Meanwhile, in the AM class, I can tell you that after all pit stops are said and done, Oosthuizen is still leading. And right now, in terms of comparative lap times, that last lap from Oosthuizen, a 1:31.3. Meanwhile, his main pursuer, Matthew Addy, who is getting closer with each and every lap, that last lap at 30.7. He was 1.3 seconds faster. Addy is on a course here. He will close down Oosthuizen towards the end of this race. At this trajectory, he should be there within the final 5 minutes, but can he do it? That is the big question as behind Jeremy DeBova tries to give pursuit at the prime driver. Matt Edmunds, meanwhile, is in P3 in the AM class, P22 overall in terms of his pace. His last lap was a 32. It's not enough, and he is the best part of what is 4 seconds behind Matthew Addy. Meanwhile, hold up a second, I'm hearing that Rees-Cowell's had a moment at turn 1, and the Drive Dead Racing driver, who was putting in such a solid performance, has had it all go to shreds, albeit fortunately he's only lost time, he hasn't lost position, and I think he'll be breathing a massive sigh of relief. Because if Matt Caruana had not had that spin, Rees-Cowell would be right now down in what would be P4 in the Pro class, P5 or P6 overall, but instead you can see it's the case he's still P4 overall, P3 in the class, and as a result Austrian Hereford and Håkon Grebstad will take motivation from this. They'll go hunt him down, but at the same time I think it will be one of those situations whereby I think Rees-Cowell will now back it off by about 10% and just try to nurse the car home to its successful conclusion as they make their way through. Still 12 minutes of this race at the Red Bull Ring to go. Still plenty of time for battles, plenty of time for over mistakes, although we wouldn't wish any on anyone right now, but you have to say it, ladies and gentlemen, as we see Håkon Grebstad. As soon as I say it, the commentator's curse strikes, and it's Håkon Grebstad who takes it wide out of turn 3, and that releases Matt Caruana up in position. Caruana is on a charge, and he is trying to hunt down Austrian Hereford, Rees-Cowell, and he can even close up to Billy Fletcher. I don't think he's got enough time of day to do that, but I think he can potentially close down at least Austrian Hereford, who is 4.5 seconds up the road and closing at this rate. As he makes his way charging down now towards turn at number 8 here, and it is the case Caruana's got the bit between his teeth. But meanwhile, I can tell you that in the battle for the AM lead, we've got Ustus here who's tucked in behind Lucas Romano here, the prime driver ahead, and you can see Ustus flashing his lights here. He knows he cannot afford to be held up at all, and when I say held up here, ladies and gentlemen, I know it sounds contradictory because it makes Lucas Romano sound like he's being lapped. No, he's the prime driver who's on the lead lap, much like Ustus, but the thing is, it's the case that Ustus at this point in the race will feel that he's a bit faster. He'll want Romano to go faster. Now what can Ustus do? Well, the only thing he can do is fight his way past the prime driver. He won't get any points for doing so, he won't get any brownie points, but he will give himself the comfort that he's cleared a driver who may be compromising his ability right now to run away with the lead in the AM class. As Matthew Addy continues to push on here, he could see his opponent at the end of the long straights right now, and he will now really push on. He would love to make it back-to-back wins, I'm sure. 10.5 minutes to go. He goes on to another lap, onto lap 33. Meanwhile, behind, Jeremy DeBova presses on here, P10 in the prime class, P21 overall, pushing on as much as he possibly can, with Matt Edmunds also in pursuit, but Matt Edmunds on that last lap of 30.47 versus Matthew Addy on the 30.49. Ustus at 31.52. Is the case they are both closing up to Ustus, but have they got enough time? Meanwhile, further down the road, I can tell you that we've got Navarro DeBova and Stefan Gadborg for Rasmussen both into the pits again, it would seem. They're both in for a second stop, which is a surprise to be sure, and not a welcome one, as that releases Kurt Van Harnacker into P4, and I think that's going to be the best he can do today, barring some exceptional circumstances, as they make the way on through. And we say hello to Darcy Trafalgar in the Twitch chat. Good evening to you, Darcy, and it's glad to hear you. Well, I hope you're doing well, and thank you for the compliment, as we see our drivers press on all the same, and we know that meanwhile it's the case that Navarro DeBova has come out behind Gus Franken here with what was a second, well no, it's not a second stop for him, my apologies folks. I think that actually was just his first and only stop, so he went incredibly long on his one and only stop, and that opening stint was a very, very long stint, a 50-minute long stint, which you wouldn't normally see in these races, but he's made it work somehow. We have seen that sometimes in the past as they make their way roaring around the circuit. Meanwhile, Gamborg Rasmussen, who's hunting down after him right now. Of course, Gamborg Rasmussen, our championship leader in the AM class right now. This is not the way he would have wanted it to go, because Matt Edmunds, his main rival, who was only going into this race a point behind him, will now get back ahead of him based on the trajectory of this race is going. And for Rasmussen, every place matters, as he'll have to try and find his way past Navarro DeBova and then Gus Franken in the closing stages of this race. Can he do it? That is the big question as they make the way on through. We'll have to wait and see, but I don't think it's going to happen right now. As meanwhile, Arjan Kregel, well, he's trying to make his way past Alexander Patak, and I think Patak's got a problem with the car. He's limping right now as Alexander Patak. We had heard he'd had some trouble earlier on in the race. We didn't get to see it, unfortunately, but Alexander Patak, the Switchback Motorsport driver, how this has gone from good to bad to disastrous, and that is just a shame for the Dane, who was looking so strong earlier on this race, but still has plenty more rounds to bounce back as he makes his way out of turn number 8 and down through 9. But looking from him, meanwhile, to Navarro de Boven versus Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen and Gus Franken ahead of him. You can see the 3 AM drivers here, if you exclude what is the BMW of Callum Reid-Garton at the head of the picture, who is a lap up on these guys, the Pro Am driver, as they make the way on through up towards turn number 2 here. It's the case Navarro de Boven is in that very uncomfortable place right now where you want to attack the guy in front of you, but you've got to defend against the guy behind you. And how do you play it? Because if you defend, you let the guy in front of you go. If you attack, you leave yourself open to being attacked from behind. Well, I think in Navarro de Boven's case, he's got to think about where does he want to finish. Does he want the place ahead of him more than he values just hold on to where he is right now? Because if so, go all in, or if not, start to think about that defense. I've been there myself, ladies and gentlemen, not necessarily in this series, but I can tell you it's a horrible place to be, and I don't ever envy de Boven as he makes his way back up to speed through turn number 5 and then coming down into 6. But meanwhile, as we look from them to look a little bit further up the order, it is the case that right now Daniel Holmer in P2, the Bright Esports driver in the Prime class, P2 in the Primes I should say, P10 overall. He's behind Mark Fletcher, but look who's behind him and building up once again. It is Phil McDougall here, who's trying to hunt down that P2 in the Prime class. He was very close earlier on in a brilliant side-by-side sequence between the two of them, but it's the case that McDougall has fallen away to an extent and he's trying to close back up. And I think he's running out of time right now. Those last couple of laps, Phil McDougall, that last lap was a 29.8 versus Daniel Holmer of 30.7. He closed up 9 tenths. But I do think Phil McDougall's only able to gain every sort of. I don't think he's stripping the pace out that rapidly right now. I think he's got a little bit in the tank, but he's also concerned about nursing the car home as he makes his way through turn number 9, because a P3 here on the return of the series after the Christmas break is no mean feat, let it be said. P3 class, of course, P11 overall, which of the Pro driver I think he would take to the bank and cash it in very nicely as he makes his way on through. But meanwhile, I'm hearing that Gus Franken has just lost 2 places to what is both Navarro de Boven and Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen. We didn't quite see that go through turn number 2, but it is the case that both drivers have passed him, and as they make the way now down towards where it's turn number 3, Argent Crable not close enough to battle here. You can see Navarro de Boven, he's got his way on through, he's got what he wanted, and now he's at the head of this pack. Can he hold on for the next 6 minutes? Well, I think if he's going to do it, anyone can. It is him. He has got a lot of pace under that belt that as he makes his way through turn number 5 and into 6. I think it will be the case that Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen will have something to say about it as we ride on board here with a Ferrari driver with only 5.5 minutes to go by the time they get over the crest of the hill. And you see Gamble-Rasmussen's got the overspeed here. He's going to go for it to turn 8. Under brakes they go, trail braking in. It's very tight. And you see de Boven's trying to hang it around the outside. He's given the room here. Very fair stuff from the Dane as they make the way through turn number 9. You don't normally go side by side through 9, but they'll make an exception as they go on to another lap here. Now we looking behind, you can see who's been brought back out into the fight. Well, it's Gus Franken, who's now getting involved. Reese Carroll as well, who will be wishing that the blue flags were being adhered to a little bit more this, as we see Gus Franken go around the outside through turn number 1, and that is brave stuff. He's made it work versus Navarro de Boven. To be fair, de Boven had to give him the room to play with there. He could have shut the door, but Gus Franken makes it count. The Dutchman now pushes on up the hill here, as we can see it's the case of Stefan Gamble-Rasmussen. It's probably grinning slightly, thinking, okay, now I've just got to defend against the Ferrari. I'll be safer against that because it's got a similar car to me. In fact, it's got the same car as me. But it is the situation where Gus Franken right now is going to respect those blue flags. I think he's going to let Reese Carroll through as they make the way down to the braking zone once again. Only what is 5.5 more, sorry, not even 5.5, 4.5 more minutes to go. And now Gus Franken's got Navarro de Boven trying to come on through with Reese Carroll, but he can't quite do it there. It is the case that the lead lap car does not advantage what is Navarro de Boven to come on through. But meanwhile, looking through them, I'm sorry to cut away briefly, ladies and gentlemen, we have to a little bit further up the order. We can see it's Anthony Beck here who's hunting down dirt bouts right at the end of this race. This is the battle for P16 overall and what is P7 in the Prime class. No change between the two of them as we see Anthony Beck going a bit wide up on the sausage curve there at turn 2. But meanwhile, looking from them to what is the battle for the AM lead, I can tell you that Morten Usus right now is holding on to that lead. He's got a 2-second advantage. Look at the rear of the picture, you'll see a red-white Ferrari. That is his main rival, Matthew Addy, for this lead. Addy is closing him down. He's got approximately 3 more laps to go, including this one, and Matthew Addy is literally trying to eke every advantage he can. That last lap, he was again 1 second faster, but I think Matthew Addy is running out of time. He has got to strip that time down lap after lap, and if he does so on the final lap. He will be there. He will have 1 lap to go on the offensive unless Usos is back in the car, unless he's saving the car for that final lap, which is a possibility. He might be saving up. He might be doing some fuel saving to give himself that last lap dash. We'll have to wait to see. Meanwhile, where is Matt Edmunds, I hear you ask? He's not close enough to this. I think he's settled on P3. I think he's decided, you know what, enough's enough. A P3 is good enough for me, and it will see him move back into the Leaders Championship, we believe, based on the current scoring system. But as he makes his way through turn number 8, and when I say current scoring, based on the maths I'm doing in my head right now, which is a bit of a juggling act compared to seeing these guys go around the track. I'm sure they're juggling enough things behind the wheel of these cars as well. But meanwhile, as we look from Matt Edmunds to a bit further up the road, we can see that Ben Hicks, meanwhile, just pressing on here, and behind it's Anthony Beck side by side here with Dirk Boutz. He's gone for the move, and Boutz not fighting that. He's instead given the place up now. I'm wondering if Dirk Boutz, this is the battle for P16 overall, what is P7 in Pro-Am. I'm wondering if Dirk Boutz has done that intentionally to then use the slipstream to try and come back at Anthony Beck down into turn 3. He has indeed, you can see, switching to the inside there, but Beck covers it off. He closes the door shut, and it's the case that Dirk Boutz simply tucks back in. I'm also wondering if Dirk Boutz is worrying about fuel here, and he needs somebody to pull him along the straights a little bit, because to yield the position into turn 2 light there and then not force the move back into 3 is a sign of perhaps someone who's not able to get to this race without a bit of a tow. But we'll have to wait and see, as Dirk Boutz, I think, is just dropping back a little bit right now. He's got Lucas Romano, his teammate from RP Motorsports, who will be closed up very soon, 1.4 seconds and closing. Meanwhile, looking from them to a bit further down the road, we can tell you that Navarro de Bova here battling with Gus Franco, but look who's also in the mix here. The Lamborghini Huracan and Matt Caruana, who is expecting the blue flags to be raised. Navarro de Bova goes wide. Matt Caruana is savage, and you can see Caruana's getting very frustrated. He's trying to pick a place on circuit in order to get past the pair of them. They're too busy battling all the AM drivers. They're battling for their race. Meanwhile, Matt Caruana wants to get through. You can see he's trying to indicate to them, look, I've got to come through, guys. Blue flags obey them, as Håkon Grebstad is trying to close up behind them, but he can't find a way on through, although Navarro de Bova does let him go. And now Caruana is just going to send the car to the inside into turn 5. And I think he's going to say to hell with this to Gus Franken, and literally surprise the Dutchman, and the Dutchman reacts to him by opening the steering wheel as he sees the whole body of that Lamborghini come on through with 1 more minute to go, and the leader is now on to what we believe is the final lap. And this is Luke McKeown, our race leader, our overall leader, and our pro leader, as he makes his way up into turn number 2. The Logitech G Ultra Z Sports driver has driven this one like a charm right now as he makes his way on his final lap. Meanwhile, I can tell you, in the battle for the AM lead, this is how close it is. They will have 1 more lap after this. It is going to come down to a final lap battle. As we can see, Usos is only now, he's less than a second. He's 8/10 of a second ahead of Matthew Addy, who is closing him hand over fist, lap after lap, corner after corner. Addy is digging so deep right now to take back-to-back wins. He wants this so much. You can see it in the body language of the car. He is pushing every apex, so much so he goes a bit deep there out of 6 into 7, but gets the car back under standard. But you can see behind Jeremy de Bova touching up to the back here of what is the AM driver. Jeremy de Bova, of course, the Pro-Am driver, who's on the same lap as them. He's P21. Now, will he make an overtake in order to gain overall position? He doesn't gain anything from it, or will he let the 2 AMs battle one another? Of course, we would love to see them battle. We would really love to see that, but it's their choice at the end of the day how they choose to race here. But no, there's no points being gained between classes as they go on to what is their final lap. And as the leader crosses the line here, it's Luke McKeown, who after a solid sprint race comes home the winner in the feature race ahead of Billy Fletcher as they cross that timeline. It is then going to be Callum Reid-Garton, who, as he makes his way out to the final corner, will take P3 overall and bring home the win in the Pro-Am class. A brilliant drive from the Pro-Am driver in a world of his own in class, it would seem. And then it is Reese Carroll, who after all the ups and downs comes home P3 in the Pro class on the podium ahead of Austrian Hereford. And then it is Matt Caruana in P5 in the Pros, completed the top 5 of the Pros. Not his best day today, but P6 overall. Håkon Grebstad P7, followed by Mark Fletcher P8 as he comes out of the final corner to complete his race. And then it will be Robert Dasunik who comes across the line in P9. Daniel Homer P10 overall, P2 in class in the Pro-Am class. Phil McDougall completed the Pro-Am podium ahead of Hacken Shot, in the end comes home in P12 overall. Matthew Hodges P13, followed by Kenny Hermans in P14 here. And then we've got Ben Hicks coming home in P15 ahead of what is Anthony Beck. And then it's going to be Dirk Boutz and Lucas Romano tucked in behind him at the last order as they come through. But what about the battle for the AM lead? We left it only moments ago. We come back to it, and as they emerge from the final corner, it's going to be a drag race line. It's Mortanusos who takes the win in the AM class in the feature race. What a battle between the two of them, just ahead of Matthew Addy, who completes on top 20, Jeremy DeVoe P21, Matt Edmunds, who did not finish on the lead lap, he finished a lap down, he came home P3 on the AM podium, and then the rest of the order was Kurt van Hernacker P23, P4 in the AM class. Jean-Louis Desschans was P24, P11 for the Prime driver, and then it was P25 for Stefan Gamborg Rasmussen, completing our top 5 in the AM class, followed by Gus Franken, Jochen Seeger, Alexander Batak, Navarro de Bova, Arjan Kregel, and as we look further down, Didi Devalaming, James Slates, and George Bland completing all of our finishes, and we had the retirements of Jürgen Nocker, Deegan Fairclough, Tom Dadswell, Tom Edmunds and Jason Landry. But my goodness, what a race, a fantastic race. And well, it was the case that the battles, particularly for the win in the AM class, went all the way down to the battles all the way through the field throughout this race. The strategy and also the on-track battling, but in particular these two right now, looking at them side by side as they make their way around the circuit. I think Addy would be saying to himself, if only I had one more lap. But as we sit on board right now with the Dana Roussos, he must be literally jumping up and down on the radio. Of course, he's got to guide that Ferrari home, so he's not going to be jumping up and down in the cockpit, but he's going to be on the radio to the Switchback Motorsport guys right now, and I can only imagine how high those emotions must be for the Dane. And meanwhile, Will, for Matthew Addy, it's been one of those days where I think for him it's been a very good day, and he can't put himself down for a win in the sprint and a P2 in the feature. It wasn't perfect, but he has shown a phenomenal turn of form at the Red Bull Ring, and it is great to see as they make their way into the pits. But what a way to end this feature race. And indeed, we'll be hearing very shortly from our winners of the feature race. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back in approximately 3 to 4 minutes for our post-race interviews. You won't want to miss them. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, well, we are back and ready for our post-race interviews for the feature race winners, and we'll be kicking off with our winner in the Pro-Am class, and that is Callum Reid-Garton. Let's bring him into the interview room and hear from our double race winner tonight. Hello again, Callum, can you hear me?
I can, mate. Hello.
Callum, back-to-back wins, and it looks as though it was quite an early race to the win, and then it was a case of just cruising off into the distance. How was that from your perspective?
Mate, it was a good race, to be fair. Like, it was nice to catch up to some of the pro guys and get an overall P3 result as well. So, the second and third for the team, which is nice. So, yeah, good race.
Indeed, it was a very strong race from yourself, and congratulations on the win. Just dissecting it a little bit further back, with regards to the start, we saw it was quite a calm start between all the drivers, particularly within the Pro-Am pack. How do you go about navigating through the field? Because we saw you come through the field rather rapidly.
I think it's large braking zones and you get a lot of draft, so overtaking opportunities ain't scarce. Especially when the pack is like bunched up the way it was. I mean, if you spread out a little bit more, then it's a little bit different, because if one person's got the draft and the one hasn't, then it's a little bit more difficult. But early on in the race, get it done, and then managed to cruise away, run my own race.
Well, it was looking very smooth and a very smart approach from yourself. And with regards to the strategy, we saw you go very long on that opening stint and only come into the pits towards the end. Was the idea to overcut the field by default, or was that a sort of strategic decision you made on the fly?
No, I kind of made it on the fly, to be fair. To be honest, it didn't really work. The saving fuel. I mean, you probably would have gained like 1 second, so like it wasn't a massive advantage. I started saving fuel late on anyway. I was sitting behind Matt for a while. He was sat behind me, so he got more fuel saving in for a fair amount of the race. And then I think for the final 10 minutes before the fuel ran out, I was fuel saving behind Matt. So race pace wise, it was just it was okay. I don't think the overcut or the undercut would have worked either way. I think the draft is too powerful here, so regardless of where you are on track, it's a bit weird, fuel saving.
Understandable. We did see a number of times just how strong the slipstream was down on the straights, particularly the run from turn 1 to turn 2, and then from turn 2 to 3. Just take us through from your perspective, because we saw you quite a bit running in the slipstream, say Matt Caruana, as you mentioned. Just what does that change to the car, particularly in that downhill braking zone into turn 3, when you're in that dirty air of another driver?
We've got like fairly medium. Well, we've got medium downforce around here, so you didn't feel it as much. Obviously, in other cars you might feel it more than others. But overall, the car and the setup felt brilliant. Like especially the endurance setup. The endurance setup felt better than the sprint setup. So, I don't know really. I suppose it's one rule for one rule for another, depending on which car you're in, I suppose. But I was able to sit behind Matt for a fair decent amount of time. He was able to do the same to me as well, so it wasn't that bad, to be honest.
I see. And then looking ahead now, really, with the Formula display, and looking ahead to Spa in a week's time, we head to the Belgian circuit. How are you feeling for the legendary Spa-Francorchamps?
Yeah, great track. BMW should be suited well to it, as well as the Ferrari as well, so obviously, Luke McKeown, he's just an alien, so he'll just do his own thing. But yeah, great race coming up, so looking forward to that.
Well, we look forward to seeing you take to the circuit in a week's time, but until then, congratulations on the double wins tonight. A brilliant and dominant display from yourself, and we look forward to seeing you once again at Spa.
Thanks, Paul. Take care.
You too. So hearing there from Callum Reid-Garton, happy with his performance, and he was mentioning there about how the overcut did not really help him out in the long-term strategy, although he gave it a try, and it was particularly around the fuel saving. I think in the end he noticed how doing that fuel saving to go longer compared to others, it didn't benefit him, but because of the pace he was displaying, it didn't make too much of a difference in the end whether it was overcut or undercut. But I think it was one of those situations whereby he'll be taking that information back for the future rounds in terms of perhaps the overcut's not the way to go on similar circuits such as Red Bull Ring, when that situation does apply. And it's also interesting to hear how with the medium downforce setup, he felt as though the dirty air and the slipstream artifacts coming out of turn 1 and ran into 2 and from turn 2 down to turn 3 did not affect the BMW M4 too much. It was more car subjective, and we can understand that in the fact that BMW is quite a bulky car in terms of its formation compared to, say, the Ferrari 488. And just a clever insight there from Callum Reid-Garton, which I think a number of drivers will be very aware of and we can take forward into future rounds when we see similar situations. But going from our Pro-Am winner now to our Am winner, we're now going to be bringing in what is Morten Oosterhuis here for the post-race interview from our winner of the AM class. And I think he's going to be quite emotional, if anything else. Hello, Morten. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Morten, congratulations on what was a very hard-fought win in the AM class. How does it feel to have taken the win at the Red Bull Ring in the feature?
I don't know, Paul. Kind of partly frustrating and partly it's a good feeling, but it was close at the end.
And if you don't mind me asking, why was it frustrating?
I was already frustrated from what happened on lap 1 in the sprint race, and then I don't know. Sometimes it's just frustrating battling, let's say, a Pro-Am driver who has tons of damage on his car in early stages of the race. I mean, there's no reason to have that battle for any of us. So, I don't know, kind of frustrating, but yeah, and that happened a few times during the race, having battles that were unnecessary. But whatever, it paid out in the end.
Oh, indeed. And thinking more about the positives, we saw at the start you had a very solid start to the race and you made a breakaway. And at the time, you were with one of your teammates out on circuit. If I remember correctly, I think it was Alexander Batak. And the two of you seemed to be running very nicely together. Was there a bit of a sort of teamwork where you were running to a defined pace?
For sure. I mean, we practiced during last week and we knew we had a similar pace. So we just tried to keep it, even though we had damage on both cars. So we just tried to keep a good pace, and it worked out because we still had the same gap to Addy, I believe it was, at the time already. So yeah, we just kept on rolling.
I see. And then with regards to the strategy, we saw that you went long. And on top of that as well, we noticed just how consistent the performance was from yourself in particular. And you came back out in the lead, and with the gap between yourself and Matthew Addy in the region of 5 seconds when you emerged from the pits. And I think it was with only 15 minutes to go. At that point, did you feel as though it was a case of letting the gap come down? Or was it one of those situations where you thought Addy was going to be there, as we saw on the final lap?
No, I felt like he was going to be there. I don't know what happened. I think my tires were gone at the time, and then I had another stupid battle in turn 2 where I had an off track and a contact with another class driver. So I don't know. I wasn't deliberately trying to narrow the gap down. I kind of like to feel safe out in front.
Understandably so, but in the end, on that final lap, you found a way to hold on and bring home what was a brilliant win in the end. And to be fair, I think you do need to give yourself a bit more of a pat on the back than you might be doing at the moment. It may sink in.
I feel like it could have gone both ways. I mean, I don't know, on the last and the second to last lap, I feel like, oh man, he's just getting closer and closer. I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm doing what I've been doing all race, but it's not working anymore. So that was tough, but it was good.
Oh, understandably so. And it worked out in the end for yourself. And now looking ahead to round number 8 in a week's time, Spa-Francorchamps, the legendary Belgian circuit. How are you feeling in taking the Switchback Motorsport Ferrari to Spa?
I think I like it. I've raced there before. I don't know if I've raced there in the GT3, but I've raced there before. I like the track. It'll be fun.
Well, Morten, as I'm seeing in the YouTube chat here from your teammate Alexander Patak saying winner chicken dinner, so I think he's very happy.
Classy.
But once again, congratulations on what was a fantastic drive from yourself, and I believe your maiden win in the series.
Yes, true.
And with that, we look forward to seeing you return in a week's time to the Spa circuit. But until then, congratulations.
Thank you, Paul. Cheers.
All the best. So hearing there from Morten Oosterhuis, very, very mixed feelings at first. You could hear the combination of frustration, but also in terms of elation at the win. And you can understand from a driver's perspective that frustration he was referring to, where he'd been battling with other drivers in different classes and how that was costing him time, and unnecessary battling, as he was describing, because of damage on cars. Again, we didn't see each of those individual battles, so we can't comment on them or give you any sort of potential analysis. But you can understand that frustration where it's costing you time, because 60-minute races, the feature races, they're all about having the best possible race time. And you'd think at the end of the day, with 60 minutes, the race has a time. How can you have a best possible race time? Well, it's about maximising the time on each lap, i.e. that overall pace. And as soon as you lose 1 or 2 seconds on a lap, that's where you feel the pinch, if you will. But you can also hear there from Oosterhuis in the fact that when we started to talk about the win and holding off Matthew Addy on that final lap, just how elated it was. And I think it's going to kick in the near future with regards to that feeling of joy and positivity. And indeed, I think his team are going to be celebrating, no doubt. And we look forward to seeing Oosterhuis and also his teammates from Switchback Motorsport coming to the Spa circuit in a week's time and what they are able to achieve in Belgium. Now, as for our pro winner, unfortunately, I haven't been able to secure the time of Luke McKeown, our back-to-back winner for tonight in the pro class in both the sprint and the feature. Dominant performance again from Luke McKeown, really showing that pace, and that points haul is going to give him the opportunity to really push into the top 4 challenge come round number 8. And I can imagine that right now he'll be thinking, right, job's well done. We move on to round number 8 and continue to bring this championship towards us. And I think Matt Caruana in particular will be feeling that pinch after a difficult night in the feature race. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we've got time for. Thank you very much for watching. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, then why not check us out on our official Next Gen Racing website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk, or if you're Facebook inclined, you can always tune in via our Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Also, a big thank you to our partners without whom this would not be possible, and that is our senior partner for Lobby 1, that's Apex Racing Academy. You can check them out at apexracingac.com. But as we now move away from the Red Bull Ring circuit, in a week's time, we head to Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps for round number 8 on Wednesday, the 12th of January, 2022. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be bringing you live from Spa in a week's time. As you can see right now from the reference footage in the background, this circuit, a venerable circuit throughout the ages for its combination of corners, and much shorter circuit than its original configuration, which had to be altered because back then it was racing on roads at extremely high speeds, very dangerous speeds. But now the circuit that we all know and love at Spa-Francorchamps, and as we can see in the background right now, Chris Keenan, who will be one of our 2 reference lap providers, it will be George Bland who provides us the reference lap for the Apex Racing Academy lobby in a week's time. This circuit with its infamous Uruge Radion combination of corners, which we've just seen Chris Keenan make his way through onto that Kimmel straight, and then we have the second and third sectors, which are very different and unique sectors. This circuit will feel in a way like a shortened version of Le Mans in the fact that this circuit, known for its 24-hour endurance events, it puts a driver through every possible test, albeit we'll have a sprint and a feature race here. It won't be a 2-hour endurance unlike in season 1, and that will be also a different challenge in its own right, in the fact that we have the 2 races, and therefore it will be the case that our drivers need to settle into a rhythm quickly because they will not have huge numbers of opportunities in order to get moves done, particularly in the sprint race, more so in the feature. And with the long pit time here as well, that strategy in the feature is going to be only ever important. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to say goodbye. We have been Next Gen Racing. I have been your host, Paul TX14 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending what media you follow me on. And thank you very much for tuning in tonight. If you have enjoyed, be sure to let us know via our official website, our official Facebook group. But until next time, from all of us here, stay safe, stay well, stay smiling. But most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.